Welcome, everyone. I would like to call tonight's meeting of the Monroe County Council to order for Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. I would like to note for the record that all 7 of us on County Council are here and we are locked and loaded and ready to go. To my left here, we have Councilors Fidel, Wilt, Deckert, myself. We also have Iverson, Henry, and Hawk. All right. Now, we will go ahead and, if you are able to please stand for our Pledge of the Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under
All right. We all have our packets that was sent to us, and hopefully we all had a chance to be able to look at that. And looking here and wanted to see to the council members if anybody wanted to amend tonight's agenda. I know we got a couple of things here. We are going to, without any objection, I would like to add item table 11E, assignment to the judgments on the waste reduction district. And then actually items 9A and B for the health department, I would like to table those until March 11th, 2025 council meeting. The other thing that I would note here, I know the courts are back on the agenda for a vote this evening, and I know that we have Presiding Judge Dekoff that is supposed to be here as well. So depending on when she shows up, because I know she had a scheduling conflict, we might have to adjust those accordingly. So just wanted to put that out there for everybody. Just kind of looking around to, yes, so we have 9A and B that we would like to table to March 11th, and then we want to add 11E, which is the assignment to the judgments of waste reduction district. Without any objections, if we can go ahead and amend that or approve that as amended. All right, so ordered. All right, next we will, as we're working on that there, we will move on to item number 4, which is public comment. These are items, public comment is set for items that are not on the agenda. Again, public comment is for items that are not on the agenda. So if you have things on the item, or if you would like to make public comment, you have 3 minutes. You can come forward to the lectern here in the Nat U Hill room, or you can raise your hand via Teams and we will acknowledge you at that time. And I see we already have a taker here in the Nat U Hill room. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. I'm John Weichard, and I'm here with Doug Bruce and Jeff McKim, who you've been more recently acquainted with, who are members of the Capital Improvement Board. We're officers of the Capital Improvement Board, and we're here tonight to express both our recognition of and appreciation for everything Monroe County and everything the County Council has done as we've advanced this project to the point where we have. The stewardship of the county over the last 34 years with the convention center, your financial support, you've taken some tough political stances in terms of food and beverage tax issues, and we've had an innkeeper's tax that have supported the convention center. And we're here to tell you that although it's very important right now, things are happening in the city council, there's much attention to that. We're moving to a bonding issue March 5th. We want you to know that we recognize this project would not be happening if it weren't for the support of Monroe County and Monroe County government. And we are here to tell you we are committed to making that recognition known as we move forward with this project. And that recognition, we're just bouncing ideas around, whether that includes historical plaques on the current building, plaques on the interior of the new building, literature so our visitors understand the role that you've played in all of this. We just went through a branding and a naming of the building. And what we were told by industry experts was that location and use are critical in terms of marketing to an exterior audience. We had a large group who gave input to a committee that we had, including, very surprisingly to me because I hadn't heard it before, Indiana University, who was present to say that they need this convention center because they're losing academic conferences because they don't have room for them. And so they can attract more academic conferences to Bloomington. But it was critically important that the name Bloomington and the word convention be in this branding that goes on. But that's for an external audience. When we get those people here as visitors, we're going to make sure they understand the contribution of Monroe County to this project and that we recognize that contribution. And we're going to be very intentional about that. And then we have an interior audience, and that's our own residents of our county, the civic uses of this building. We intend to also market that internally. But we're here just to tell you we appreciate all of this. We wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for this 34-year history of what you've done in support of the convention center and now in support of this project. And I'm trying to figure out how much time I have to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Tell me when 3 minutes is up and I'll quit saying thank you. But anyway, that's why we're here. And we just want to express our appreciation and our recognition of that contribution. We wouldn't be here without you and what you've done. So thank you very much.
That was perfect timing. All right. Any other takers here in the Nat U Hill room? Don't be shy for items not on the agenda. You can, again, come forward here. Or you can raise your hand via Teams. And I'm looking and I don't, but I see somebody here. Welcome.
Thank you. Would it be all right if I sat? Sure. Thanks. Thank you. My name is Seth Muchler. I am a resident of Monroe County. I want to particularly introduce myself to Councilmember Feidel and Councilmember Henry, who I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting either of you before. I want to come today to speak about the proposed jail construction. I want to say at first that I continue to not support the new jail. I think that there are better ways to work through issues in our community. I think that the North Park site, I continue to find it an inappropriate site. I would encourage all of you to go at night, park your car, and walk from the North Park site to downtown Bloomington and see if you still think it's an adequate site. But all of that aside, I also wanted to say, it's been a challenging month. A lot's been going on. And I've been thinking personally, okay, well, all of this is very big. It's national, it's statewide. And it does feel kind of funny in some ways to, try to protest and raise hell here in Bloomington, because Bloomington is a very progressive place. And I don't think we hold a lot of the same values that we're seeing in Washington. So I've been thinking, okay, what are ways that I can make a difference here in Bloomington? And I think that this jail is very emblematic of how we can fight for our values here in our town. As we are on the brink of or already in fascism, a dictatorship, even if you think that that is a line too far, I think oligarchy is absolutely happening. And I think that it is our job as a community with values that we want to uphold, values of compassion, values of equality, values of diversity. It is our job to live those values and to protect against attacks towards those values. And we are already seeing that incarceration has historically been used as a weapon of fascism, and we are seeing that incarceration is currently and planning to continue to be used as a way to enforce these attacks. And, I know many of you, and I think, I know that you're not gonna wanna throw people who are from the LGBTQ plus community, people who are immigrants, people who are dissenters, all of these things, people who are neurodivergent into jail, but we can't guarantee that. And I think we need to keep these things in mind when we're designing a facility, when we're considering a facility, when we're considering bed count. And Sheriff Marte, he and I don't agree on everything, but I've been very appreciative of his firm stance of not cooperating with ICE. But there very well may come a day when he is compelled to, when we are compelled to. And I think that when we work on a facility we need to be mindful of how it might be used in the future, long past any of your tenures on the council, long past Sheriff Marte's tenure, and how it could be used against our community. So thanks for your time.
All right. I appreciate that. Is there any other takers here in the Nat U Hill room or via Teams? Going once, going twice. All right, we will move along. And again, thank you to all the comments that we hear, and we encourage those folks that continue to watch. It looks like we got some new folks here on Teams here. We encourage you to maybe in the future, if you have something that compels you to speak that is not on the agenda, to go ahead and do so. So we appreciate that. All right, next up, we will move on to department updates. Again, these are for items that are not on the agenda. Department updates are 10 minutes each, and we will time you to make sure that you are doing so accordingly. We do have, first up on the agenda here, I do see that we have Mr. Scott Carnegie with DLZ, and just wanted to provide him some time to speak. So thank you, welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. I see a few new faces. So just a brief introduction. My name is Scott Carnegie. I'm a project manager with DLZ. We are here tonight to discuss a timeline update for the new Sheriff's Office and Jail and Justice Center. I'm a lifelong Bloomington, Monroe County resident as well. So the handout that I provided to you, there's some critical milestone dates on there. Now, also keep in mind that 2 nights from tonight, Thursday, I believe at 5:30, there's a combined committee where a lot of this information is going to be kind of repeated again. But I wanted to come here tonight and just give you an update regarding the timeline, really what we've accomplished thus far, where we are today, what's next, and where are we going long term. So if you look at the handout, and again, it's dated February 25th tonight, but you can see several things on the first page that we've already accomplished. First of all, we started the pre-design phase for the Justice Facility on April 17th. And then we started the pre-design phase for the Sheriff's Office and Jail on July 22nd. There's been considerable time, energy, and effort. And just a shout out for the transition team, as well as all of the Justice Center representatives for the time that they've committed for this project. I know they probably cringe when they see a meeting request from me because they come pretty frequently, but they've always shown up and been a viable part of the conversation and decisions. We've also completed both the Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessment for the North Park site, as well as the site reconnaissance. Now, those were completed by VET Environmental Engineering. We've also completed the preliminary geotech that was done by Patriot Engineering for the North Park site. You can see there's a lot of information on there regarding the public hearing on the tax increase. Just a real quick point of note, Mr. Garitas and I spoke briefly before the meeting out here, and I gave him a copy of this handout as well. You can see also on November of 2024, we completed the survey for the North Park site. And purchase agreement was also, I believe, completed on November the 12th, 2024. On January the 30th of this year, we forwarded the pre-design package to the Weddell Garmong Smoot, the construction management team, so that they could begin to look at and get their heads kind of wrapped around the cost estimate for the proposed scope of work. And Chris Cioli with Weddell Brothers, he's sitting back here in the back as well. Real quick, just let me give a brief explanation of what the pre-design phase is, and you're going to see on Thursday's presentation a little better explanation. But the pre-design phase is the very first step that we need to take, because that's really where we're solidifying and kind of defining what the scope is. So it starts with a site assessment, which I think you're all very familiar with the different various sites we've looked at. It also includes programming. So programming is when we meet with individual departments and we have the dialogue and the conversation. How many offices, for example, how big do those offices need to be? How many conference rooms? We work through their whole departmental needs so that they can, operate functionally and efficiently. So that's the programming phase. And then we also then translate that spreadsheet, again, you're going to see it on Thursday, into a conceptual design where we begin to take those different departments and begin to organize them, how they might be organized within a building footprint. That's conceptual design. From there, then we take that building footprint, conceptual, and we lay it out on a site, and that's what we call site master planning. And I think some of you participated in some of those master planning exercises as well. So that's the pre-design package. I'll present that more thoroughly on Thursday evening, and that's what we provided to the Willigarmong Smoot team on January the 30th. So the top of page 2, that is the first major milestone. That is Thursday evening when we present the pre-design package for the combined commissioners and council. And then on February 2025, it's currently scheduled that we close on the North Park site. The property is purchased. On April the 30th is our next major milestone. So that's where we're, on February 27th, when we complete our pre-design package, we're going to be asking for authorization to start our formal design phases. Now, there's 3 little sub-design phases when I say design phase. There's schematic design, design development, and construction documents. So on April the 30th, we're scheduled to forward our schematic design package to the Willigarmong Smoot team. They will update their cost estimate, we'll formally present it, ask for authorization to move into the second design phase, which is the design development phase. And then we will come back and present that on September the 25th. And again, we will ask for formal approval to start the final design phase, which is the construction document phase. Now, each design phase builds upon the other one. It's just a continual progression until you get to the construction documents. When I say construction documents, think of blueprints that we've all seen. That's the very finite detail information the contractors need to assemble their bid. So on May 2026 is the month that we're anticipating receipt of bids. And then starting construction in July of 2026 with construction being substantially complete in March 2029. Then with training, transition, and occupancy, we always put that on there because oftentimes that's kind of overlooked. But when you're talking about moving offices, whole departments, inmates, it's a major, major undertaking. It takes a lot of coordination. So we always put that on there because we have to keep that at the forefront for planning purposes. So that's just a snapshot of what we've completed, where we are today / Thursday when we formally present the pre-design phase, and then where we're going in the long term. Any questions?
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'll start off with a question and then I'll look to my council members here. I see on the handout that you gave us, July 26 is tentatively beginning construction, and then March 29, construction substantially complete. I guess, and being a novice going into this, is what would be your experience? Does construction, of course, we know construction, you go into a lot of different issues that could kind of delay that, but given your expertise and your experience, how long average does these types of projects generally take?
So I'm looking back here in the back for Chris Cioli to back me up here, but I will give my opinion, and Chris, and then if you want to interject or disagree, you can. So obviously, the construction duration is usually a factor of how big the project is. Also keeping in mind that we have to consider our local labor workforce. That all plays into how long a project takes to construct. This is a big project. So I think what we have anticipated is approximately 30 months of construction, something like that. So about 2.5 years. Now that's, if you read the notes at the very top of on the page 1, it said that both projects are being designed, bid, and constructed concurrently. Now, that's not to say that we might not start the jail portion first. We're in there, doing the footings, foundations, getting our under slab plumbing and that kind of stuff in. And then that crew will move over and, perhaps start on the Justice Center, so they kind of cycle that way. But
Sealy's Water Brothers. So just to echo what Scott said, it is the intention with the way this building is orientation is that the two buildings will run concurrently. And with the site, so you're doing the foundations, the under slab plumbing, everything it will go simultaneously. They'll go up at the same time. Ideally, it'll be a shared workforce, like you said. Hopefully you'll have one contractor doing the jail side and the justice side, different doing the justice side. Best for the project that they go up together.
Right. And I'll look over to my left here, seeing any questions. Maybe we'll hold our questions until Thursday. And then to my right, all right, Councilor Iverson.
Just real quick, this is a fantastic document. This really helps a fiscal body understand where our investments are going. We want to have impact with our investments. We're asking the public to trust us. You've heard from members of the public saying, this is going to be longer term than any of us are going to be here. This is very helpful. And I would ask that we include this in the minutes of this meeting so that we have these dates in the minutes of this meeting. Mike, I don't have questions that I want you to answer today, but for Thursday, there's 3 general areas that I'm going to have questions. Number 1 is costs as it pertains to any type of overruns that are going to be happening in terms of construction. Number 2, any costs that are going to be incurred in terms of staffing, in terms of not only the current the transition team, but also as we move into the actual operations. And then third, I also want to echo any type of concern. I want to vocalize my concern about operational costs that will be incurred as we're looking at footprint, bed size, things like that. We're hearing rumblings of bed size as a moving target, and I just want to make sure that as this body is the financial caretakers of the community, that we're keeping those 3 things in mind.
just one real quick point, Peter, is this schedule, we will keep this updated and we'll re-present this every time that we hit one of these milestones.
Wonderful. Thank you for that transparency.
Sure.
Councilor Henry.
Thank you, President Crossley. I would only echo Councilor Iverson's statement, but also to ask for Thursday if there's any information available about whether or not our local labor workforce has approached Weddle or yourselves about pre-labor agreements to be in place for the construction of the facility, and if that conversation has started or if it's a little premature. But I'd be interested in hearing what our labor unions have presented to you in terms of being eligible to bid and agreements in place for the project. Thank you.
Very good.
No one else? All right. Thank you. And we'll see you on Thursday. All right. I'll also extend it again for any other department updates for items not on the agenda. Not sure if there's anybody here in the Night U Hill room or on Teams, but please raise your hand and do so at this time. And that there are none. All right, we will move forward with item number 6, which are our consent agenda items.
Council, I move to approve the following consent agenda items for February 25th. First, the Health Department's request in Fund 8130-0000 NACO Nacho Grant, a category transfer of $204.08 from the services category to the supplies category. Number two, the court documents request in Fund 9113-0000 Family Court Grant to create account line 30028 Travel and Training. Three, the Probation Department's request in Fund 9157-0000 Pretrial Services Grant ODD to create account line 17601 Longevity. Fourth, the Probation Department's request in Fund 9149-0000 Mental Health Court Grant ODD to create account line 17601 Longevity. And finally, the Probation Department's request in Fund 9170-9625 Veterans Treatment Court to create account line 17601 Longevity.
Motion, need a second.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments from council? Looking to my right here? Nope. Looking to my left? Seeing none. And we are all in person, so we can do this by voice vote. So all those in favor of approving the consent agenda item signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item number 7, which is the discussion with our Financial Solutions Group, FSG. I'll invite our member here from FSG to take the table so that we can discuss some year-end totals and beginning of the year projections for council to consider as we are talking about budgetary matters. But before we have Mr. Garitas here, I just wanted to, it's no surprise, I'm just gonna go ahead and address the elephant in the room. In reviewing the county's 2025 budget, that was adopted last October, it was determined that the tax rates and levies approved were at a lower rate than the state allows. Taxpayers should see the rates for their properties lessen because of this action. Overall, this will result in less revenue being generated by property taxes, which currently is one of the primary sources of funding for local government services for use by the county. Given the lack of certainty regarding our economy at the state and definitely the federal level, as council president, I am not optimistic that this reduction can be permanent, but it would be a decision for this full council to consider in the future. It is feared that the short-sighted and whimsical decisions being made by state and federal executives will lead to astounding funding needs for our local government. And in light of the unknown economic state and this lower tax levy, it is my hope that this county council will evaluate the county's government budget needs, impacts of pending legislation, and current available funding to decide what options are available in addressing the lower rate, which includes whether to appeal the approved levy rate. If the council as a whole decides to move forward with this appeal, and the appeal is granted by the Department of Local Government Finance, a higher rate will be implemented for the 2026 budget year. I, as president, will commit to continuing to weigh these options while efficiently stewarding the available funds to provide efficient government services, and would like to invite my fellow council members to do the same. Additionally, I would like to say that I appreciate the auditor in bringing this to our attention. It is not an easy thing that was brought to our attention, but I think in the lack of government that we see right now, and transparent, this is Monroe County government being transparent even when mistakes are made. We're all human, those things happen, but we can learn from this, and I've spoken to the auditor and she has assured me that there are things put into place so this will not happen in the future. So just wanted to address the elephant in the room there, and if we have any other further discussion, we can do so at a later time. But now that we got that out the way, we'll have Mr. Greg Garitas present. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. For anyone that does not know me, I'm Greg Garitas. I'm with Financial Solutions Group out of Plainfield, Indiana. And I've worked with some of the council members for a long, long time. and I'm not particularly looking at her, but I am. and so I'm a registered municipal advisor. I hold 2 licenses with the SEC, and I also am a certified public accountant and an expert witness in rate of return and cost of capital. And so I bring all of that experience with me and my group that's back in Plainfield, and we help a lot of major counties such as Tippecanoe County, Hancock County, and Hendricks County. Hancock and Hendricks I've done for over 25 years. And so the state of where we're heading is definitely, and for 2026 budget, is definitely going to change. With all my counties that I work with, I always say on January 1, we've started the 2026 budget. Okay, because everything you do in 2025 either snowballs into the 26 budget, or the revenue that gets depleted will then make things a little harder. I worked with your work group and met with you all on Friday, and I put together 5 areas that I kind of want to go through. And I believe everyone has a copy of this document. And then I also gave you an updated general fund sustainability analysis, which you also have, and we will send that out electronically. So I will read these, but I will also give editorial comments. And please stop me at any point in time, because quite frankly, I live and breathe this. As a CPA, we do no income tax or no personal taxes. We specialize in cities, towns, counties, libraries, townships, you name it. So that's all we do. So ending cash balance has grown. The ending cash balance as of the end of 24 has really grown to a strong level. Which, by the way, in most of my clients, that's what's happened, because Hancock County will tell you, I've been saying for a couple of years, we know the storm is coming. We just don't know when it's going to happen, but we can guarantee a storm will happen, okay? Just like it did down in Key West, and they got flooded just yesterday. So having a strong general fund balance, which you do see in the summary, and I went over on through the internet or the Teams meeting on Friday, and we have a very strong $30.1 million ending balance. So we've come a long, long way, and most county governments have come a long, long way. So we're set up for quite well for what I believe is the next storm coming. But now let me put it into context with a couple other items here. B, and this is going to be where people will get in trouble come 2026 and 2027 if the interest rate, and I had printed it out from the Fed, St. Louis Fed, if they're right and the interest rate by mid next year or earlier goes down to 2.5%, your interest income, which was at an all-time high of $8.9 million for 1 year, 2024, is not going to happen again. And in fact, we may end up to be back in the level that you will see in the sustainability. You could be starting to migrate back to where you were a couple $100,000 in 1 year. Keep in mind, you also spent your ARPA funds, or spending those, and those balances are going down. So the real big elephant in the room is, when does the interest rate go down? And I like to say, if I knew that exactly when it went up, I'd be calling you in from Bahamas, and that would be where I would be holding my Teams meeting. And so, nobody truly knows, even St. Louis Fed, but they are saying it will start trending down. Right now it's Trust in Indiana is still 4.3. So we're still relatively high for 2025. But look at the 21 million, the number that sums up over 23, 24, and projected 25. So The cash balance did grow by 9.3 million for 22 to 24. But keep in mind, again, take note that if you go back to any of those numbers, most of it was made up by interest income. And I guarantee you, that is not going to be sustaining. There's no way, And so that's an important item to remember. Certified non-supplemental certified supplemental income tax went up 2.8 over those years. So we had a nice 4.8 million or 15.6 million that actually came in 2024. And then we had a supplemental, kind of your overall highest supplemental that came in at 3.9. Now, how to remember supplemental lit is when I say all the good taxpayers that filed a little later or filed estimates and everything like that, and it was all reconciled. Remember, all the data, Representative Thompson is in my district. I live in his district, so I get to talk to him quite a bit. And so he's hoping for real-time information. We were hoping for real-time adjusted gross income numbers a year ago. That's not going to happen for a while. But virtual fencing at the Internal Revenue Service at the state level or Indiana Department of Revenue is happening already. Matter of fact, in Hamilton County, it's being tested in Westfield and things like that. So virtual fencing will allow, or what we'll end up going to, is probably a jurisdictionalized income tax. And that's the goal. So if Bloomington wants to have its own income tax and Monroe wants to have its own income tax, it's likely to go there at some point in time. So, and that's heading to a theater near us. So that 3.9 highest ever supplemental lit, to me, that was probably almost a mistake, because the year before, not a mistake that you got paid too much and they're going to take it back. It's a mistake in that the year before it was 465. They were making up over for a couple years. Okay. And we've seen that. I've also even seen that in Tippecanoe County, and it may be a little something to do with some of the university effects. Because Tippecanoe County and Monroe County is different. They're different. There's no doubt about it. And you're different than Hancock County and Hendricks County by all stretches of the imagination. So those are the things I really want you to kind of focus in on the revenue side, because you're going to say, we really did build a nice balance. Well, you did really have some great opportunities. And those opportunities, I can't say will continue to happen. So the other one I did notice there, and I put in F, overspent the actual budget by 2.6, but one of my staff helped me out there, and he said, but we transferred the 2.2 to the rainy day fund, so you really just overspent the difference. And that 2.2 investment in the rainy day fund and getting that at about the $10 million level is very valuable. Remember, I consider the rainy day fund, and I've always said this, and I say this across the state, should be your last bottom dollar. It isn't someplace you say, oh, tomorrow, salaries are going to have to go up by $500,000. Let's go to the rainy day and pay for it. That's not really the intent of it, and shouldn't be. And when we go to the rating agencies, we explain the intent. Okay, it's your last bottom dollar, and it really kind of serves the gap as emergency. Questions on section 1?
Yes, Councilor Decker.
I'm curious. I know you follow the legislature fairly closely, and you're close with Representative Thompson. Do you have an estimate on geofencing when we might see that? And has there been any legislation that's moved on that, or Thompson wiggling an eyebrow or anything else that would indicate that this is nearer or closer?
The legislation actually comes up for consideration each and every year, but the virtual fencing and the Indiana Department of Revenue computer system is in the process of being updated, and that's a long-term project of several years. So my answer is stay tuned. It is not probably coming in the next year or so. Okay.
Councilor Hall.
Just wanted to comment, of course, a lot of that interest revenue was coming in because we were setting on all those ARPA funds, and we discussed that at length even a couple of years ago, that we couldn't count on that as renewable revenue. But we also know that right now we're setting on a large amount in the Economic Development Fund, which we're holding back, thinking that's how we're going to cover the bond for the jail. But while we are holding off on that jail, it doesn't appear it's going to be spending down out of that fund. We'll be, if the interest rates would stay up, then we'll be drawing in more money for that period of time only, because once we do the bond and start paying back the bond, that money's not going to be sitting there to make that interest for us. So at some point in time, when we look to the future, I think we should sort of take a look at which of those funds are setting there higher than what they're going to be in the future.
So you're totally correct. I call that the crossover date. And the crossover date will be when the interest income at Trust Indiana or somebody like that is lower than the cost of money for the construction side. Now, the engineering boys aren't here, but I keep getting them telling me cost of construction is going up 12%, between 7 to 12% each year. And so you are making your 4%, but you're also, the cost is exceeding. Now, also, Councilman Hawk, keep in mind that what we'll probably end up doing is interim lease rental payments. So once we issue those bonds, we'll be using it. It's called the interim lease rental payments, and we'll be renting what we already own, which is the current facilities. And so we will start servicing that debt and immediately, so to speak.
But that was the other thing I wanted to mention. We are setting on a lot of properties here, and I'm sure there's a plan about when those people will be moving out of those government buildings. And it's certainly, at my years in real estate, we know we don't want all those properties to go on the market at the same time, because you don't want to flood the market with it. And I wondered if you're working with the commissioners as to what the plans are to maybe even sell us off a few at a time, one or something at a time, and lease it back from that purchaser, so that we'll know for sure it's sold, and lease it back to keep our employees there until it's time to move them on. That's just a suggestion.
Yeah, and so midsummer here, we've already got our first meeting planned on the financing. And keep in mind, we'll be using the jail correctional facility tax and the added, both of those. And keep in mind, the jail correctional facility is on the entire county, so to speak. So that's very, very good. And actually is how I'm going to do the juvenile center in Tippecanoe County that they're trying to do. So, it's important. We're going to kind of mesh up both of those, because one of the points here that everybody asked me to do is ask about or talk about the annexation. Keep in mind, it has been changed to where it follows population, doesn't follow levy. So, and we've said, we asked your council, Molly, about getting an updated fiscal plan, and I'm assuming there won't even be one available unless the judge asks for it. But that's over 5 years old, those impacts. And so those impacts and the change on the population will be very important, but that's the road we'll start heading down to in the summer. We'll stay back on this, but those are important things to keep in mind. Yeah. Okay. Section 2, legislature, as I described on Friday, the meat is being put into the sausage grinder, and the sausage is going to come out. And I told you, It's going to be 11:59 on the night they go home. Okay, and that DLGF bill, it's my understanding already is I don't know how many pages, 300 pages or something like that, and that's going to be the catch-all. And by the way, I wholeheartedly believe we should look very, very hard on 2026, making up that levy. And Jeff McKinnon said, well, did you think that we won't be able to do it? I said, no, we'll try. As I said on Friday, you definitely, if you approve, we would want to do that. And we would want to try and make that up. But I'll get off that. But the whole point is that the growth quotient that I think is going to stick, I'm real concerned it's going to stick. And the growth quotient will be 0% for 2026. So I just went to the salary committee meeting in Hancock County, and they said, well, what do you think about us giving 3%? And I said, with a 0% growth quotient, it may be tough. Okay. And they said, 0, you're not serious, are you? And I said, well, I think they are serious. Remember, they almost tried to go back to the county specific growth quotient. And I even told one senator and a couple of representatives, we tried that 6 or 7 years ago. Half of the state of Indiana was negative growth quotients. That didn't work they didn't even implement it because it was stupid. Okay, I'm sorry, that it was. Okay, and so we got that off the table because I don't know what Monroe County's individualized growth quotient would ever be, and nobody even knows, and we'd have to go back about 7 years to find it out. But 0, 1, 2, I'm afraid that's going to make a nice headline, just like circuit breaker 1, 2, 3. Remember, it did not have a mathematical calculation to the 1, 2, 3. It made a great headline. This is another great headline that's going to, the voters are going to say, oh, wow, that's really good. They're really making them cut. And so I'm concerned that that's going to make it out of the sausage grinder as we go forward. But again, there's always a 50-50 chance. Okay? So next one is, and I know that GO bonds here and in many of my county clients, the ones that actually have not done GO bonds, the counties, they've spent down their cash reserves. They're going to be in a hard place. Brown County last year just swear up and down. I fought with them for six months to try and do one. They finally did one, and they ended up this year with the biggest balance they ever had because debt and equity. I'm sorry, I went to the Indiana School of Accounting and Finance. Debt and equity, it's not a bad word, okay? An optimal capital structure, 60-40, 50-50 or whatever. There's good times and bad times, and we've always achieved an outstanding interest rate on our GO bonds every time we sold it, and I would beg to offer we sold it less than the interest income rate. Remember, interest income is what we receive. Interest expense is what we pay. And so it's been a very, very good tool. Well, right now, I think this is going to stick to every other year for a GO bond. And so, which unfortunate because like in Hancock County, I do $3 million every year. And they're like, okay, then we'll just have to do $6 million in 1 year. And, rather than, and that's, that I know, and it doesn't make sense. But the answer is, let's do this fiscally responsible. And, unfortunately, the laws don't always come out that way, right? So, concerns that the tax bills could be limited to growth by no more than 2%. That's been a hot topic, and that's yet to be defined. And then finally, I think the one that, again, is going to work is the other reductions to homestead property taxes, because they're going to give homesteads a break, okay? And so Bree would be rerunning all of those calculations for the, probably in July for the pay 26 AV, so get ready. You might kind of gas that program up for Lau. It's Lau, right? And yeah, and so, you know, we're probably going to end there. Section 2, questions? If not, Section 3, annexation. I briefly spoke about that. The impacts being so outdated. And what we did is in the sustainability and in the assumptions, I told you on Friday we had it hitting 2026. We've moved it now back to 2027. And you can see that it hits many of the miscellaneous revenue, and you have negative numbers. Again, it's a estimate based upon a lot of older impact, and that fiscal plan, all those fiscal plans are totally outdated. Okay, I'm hoping the judge will ask for a new one, but if not, we will work with whatever. And the big impact now, because edit is tied to population, that's going to be important. That is also, you know, just even if they do small annexations, remember your pie will not go up, your pie will go down. Okay, your piece of that pie. Okay, so the edit pie, I call it. So, any questions on number 3? If not, I'll move to number 4. Number 4, I know there was a lot of discussion on this on Friday, would suggest that no action be taken on, at this point in time, on the, what I call the jail matrix, or the sheriff matrix, and the jail increase, because we've got way too much that is unknown at this point in time. We do have to have, I call it the boys and girls downtown, Indianapolis. We got to get them out of town. And we got to assess what happened on 11/59. Okay. Otherwise, I'm giving you bad advice. Okay. And so my advice at this point is no, it is not going to work at this point. There's too many things that's liable to send something down. Is there any issue?
No, I think we should keep going.
Perfect. Now, what we are looking at across the state on B4B is the reduction in the state payments for level 6. Level 6, it's only 139,000 here, but the Sheriff Association said the state obviously is looking for budget cuts. They're going to go in and take a correct count, and they're going to start paying you on actual count. In one county, I've got it going from 11 million or 1 million, 1.2 million down to 300,000. So it's going to be big bucks, and it will not be big bucks in the future. But you don't keep, I believe, given all the numbers I've seen in the miscellaneous Form 2 breeze, that it's not that high of a level here. So.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Madam President. I mean, there's a disruption in here. Do we need to take a break? I'm just seeing folks run around the room.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I want to make sure we give Greg his respect here.
Take a 5-minute.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
All right, guys. I will go ahead and do a 5-minute recess right now. So, all right, we are gonna get started.
So thank you very much for that coffee break.
Class is back in session.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed the students were getting a little disorganized. So.
Yeah.
So number 4, I'm going to go back just in case again, we're making the recommendation that we pause on, on that action. I went over the numbers that the staff sent me. It's a tremendous amount of numbers or tremendous amount of dollars, I should say. And so until we figure out, like I said, 11:59 boys and girls from downtown Indianapolis leave, I cannot recommend that because it's just too many possibilities at this point. So, and I was telling you about the reduction in state level 6 payments, and it's not as big here, but it still could go from 139 maybe down to 30. Yes.
Yeah, Counselor Hogg. Use your microphone.
Okay, so There are several other, this is county government. There's always somebody wanting a salary change. That's not unusual. So are you saying we should just stop all of the salary changes now or just law enforcement? What are you saying?
Well, I'm saying all at this point in time until we get through, because once you open the floodgate continues to be open. And, that I told you those, and right down there, in number 5, no additional appropriations I put for the rest of the year, except, notice my except, if you're approving salary changes. I told Councilmember Iverson that what I'd like to do for 26 is when we come up with the total salary, if you have a salary recommended increase, we break that down between step increases, basically mandatory step increases, and what you're giving overall. Because we have those step increases in most counties amount to really big dollars.
Yeah.
And they sneak up on you,
That's
and
a
you're
good idea.
already going to have those.
It's a really good idea.
Okay. And so put that, yes.
Oh, I was going to, Madam President.
Go ahead.
No, I appreciate, I didn't mean to cut you off halfway, Greg, but just so I'm clear in where we are in that piece, this packet you provided tonight, it includes the additional approps that were done since January 1 that you were provided on Friday of last week?
$100,000 that was appropriated, but that was already additionally appropriated. It does not include anything that's not been approved yet.
All right, so the court reporter was not included in this document. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, because we're using the books and records as amended by the auditor. Okay, and so that's the full 100,000 that has gone up. Okay, so number 5.
Another question.
Yes.
Are you saying every change that has happened since we adopted the budget, even any changes that would have been made last year or so far this year, after we adopted the budget that affects us long term?
Absolutely, especially in the salary side. Yeah. And you've been awful aggressive on the salary increases over the last 3 years. And as I warned, last year, that's catching up with you. And that's what we're seeing in this sustainability. And that's where we're concerned about sustainable revenue being less than sustainable expenses. Okay. And we're going to get to that root of the evil and, by one of these work sessions, we'll get there. It's just, we've got to have a lot more information, not from the auditor's office, but solidification, like I said, in the state. And then it'll be easy to start projecting from there. But like I said, there will be federal impact, like interest income and things like that. But it don't and as we talked, we're projecting out in 28, but if you start having that transition team on the jail stick around, we may need to factor that in, because I don't think I've seen that in anything.
It's already included in the budget.
You guys
and
are
the salary
muted.
ordinance.
What?
Somebody.
It was TSD. It's okay.
Yeah, we're okay. We're okay.
Go ahead, Kim.
I was going to say the transitional team is already budgeted and included in the salary ordinance and everything that we're doing. That's been going on since last year.
Yeah. So what we would do, though, is continue those. It's my understanding.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty important to understand and remember, too. And probably, do you know what the total, I'm going to venture, do you know what the total transition expense team is on salary? Okay.
Can you how many FTEs is that? Is it 8?
I thought it was 6.
I thought it was 6 as well.
6.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 6.
Thanks.
I've built a lot of jails, and I've always been told by the architect, it's, the new and improved design is not going to use more people. And 4 or 5 years later, I'm saying, then why are we hiring new people? It comes right back and bites them every time. Okay? So, yes.
Go ahead.
Just alluded to what my question was going to be, depending on the number of beds, and we surely aren't going to build a smaller jail than what we already have. I mean, it's just, you have to have so many people for every cell that you have in order to be able to, it's just like at the hospital, you may have extra beds, but you've got to have the staff to cover for the extra beds. So, you know, we need.
But do remember, you know, in Hendricks and Hancock and Vermilion, I think they filled theirs up. But there's been a lot less prisoners in most of the donut counties than they built for. Okay, so there is considerable room in the inn. And most people at that time kept saying incarceration was going to do nothing but do this. And it's not proving to be the same. And then I shared, we're spending $250,000 a year just on tablets now for prisoners to be able to educate themselves and try and do better and help get them out of the jail. But that's a heck of an expense right there annually, you know. So, but those are all those things we got to kind of be careful about. And you think you got a lot of money in the bank, but it doesn't take very long for it to go away, you know. That's for sure.
In essence, just because we see it right now doesn't necessarily mean we should be spending it.
Be what?
Spending it. Because I think sometimes folks see what we have in our general and they see it, and it's no reason why, you know, in their mind, and that's no fault to theirs, but in their mind, they see it, we should be able to spend it, but we are trying to be fiscally responsible. That's the key word that I keep hearing tonight. So we're trying to make sure that we're doing that so that we can have an abundance in the future.
Constant discussion is, what is the right size? Now, we do have your minimum fund balance, and we're 15, and that's a good minimum fund target balance. But what is too much? What is too little? That is the age-old question. And it's really, the way I look at it, it's predicated on the next 3 years at least, not based upon today, okay? Because it's going to change. So, okay, so back to, go ahead.
I hate to keep asking these questions. Okay, when you look at the revenue that's coming into the CUME funds,
CUME cap.
because that assessed value has jumped so high, and you've got your CUME fund still at the same rate, and yet all those CUME funds are still sitting there under the circuit breaker. Now, I don't think we're going to have as much trouble with circuit breaker because assessed values went up so high, but I think that's just something we need to keep in mind. Because the higher that CUME cap is, then maybe we can use that and for that year that we're not going to do a bond.
Sure.
Yeah.
I told you my optimal capital structure 60-40. What I'd say is the equity component of that. The equity component of that is CUME cap. It's CUME bridge. It's CUME major bridge. I mean, remember, I recommend the CUME major bridge many years ago based upon stealing the concept from Allen County. And Allen County was the only one that had it. And so it's really paid dividends for Hendricks, Hancock, Monroe, and, you know, Lisa. It really works good. That's your equity position.
They used to call that the Marty Hawk tax because I'm the one that looked it up and fought to get that major bridge. But what would we be doing right now if we didn't have that major bridge?
And keep in mind, those are also rate-controlled funds, not levy-controlled funds, right? Your general fund is levy-controlled. Your CUME is not. It's rate-controlled. So I'm kind of hoping the 0% that CCD will be out of that, right? Because that's a rate-controlled fund. So stay tuned.
You think they're going to tie the CUME funds to a zero?
I don't think they will.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's already rate-controlled fund.
Yeah, I don't.
So if all three of those, CUME bridge, major bridge, CUME capital, become valuable funds. Yeah. So, and I've got your 1782 here, if anybody, but I've gone through that. Okay, back to number 5. So I'm just saying number one, or 5A is pretty obvious. 5B, that's the one where I think what we do is we get the first quarter and we run the comparison of first quarter annualized to total, and we find out where it is. And guess what? That doesn't allow, there's some anomalies because some things are paid up front and some things are paid later on. But it would be, it's a great check to run. And obviously, Bree, it's really important when we get to the 6-monther, and we're doing our 18-month budget. But there's no reason we can't run that analysis on the 3-month or, after 3 months are done. So find out. C, we had a discussion in our work group meeting yesterday, and we had it on Friday. I mean, this is very, very important because we did find that you reduced the self-insurance fund by over $743 in 1 year. That self-insurance reserve fund, I believe, used to be around $2 million. And mine, every time I'm setting the 2026 budget in every budget session, number 1's payroll, number 2's health insurance. Number 3 is everything else, okay? And health insurance is sinking some ships out there. And I now have one county that said they want to look at self-insuring property, their casualty and property, because they may get denied. And that will be that'll be a new insurance reserve fund if we ever get to that point. And with your new facilities, that could be, if that world starts getting tighter around your neck, that's going to be tough. And so we're doing that self-insurance reserve on property right now. But I'm worried that, and so we've asked for a lot of details about, I got some education from Kim about how you're doing $13,000 per employee, and we may want to improve that because I think there's some need. Yes.
What does improve that mean?
Pardon me? Well, first of all, I always tell everybody you got to use total cost of insurance. And what does that mean? That means scripts, that means your annual fee, that means your stop loss that you don't get reimbursed, taking all those costs and then creating a true cost of service for health insurance. And then it was my understanding 24 is the first year you charged it back to the different budgets. And so, but I beg to offer the 13's probably not fully allocated cost. And I run into this every time I give this discussion. So go ahead, Bree.
Yeah, if I may just add, we've, my team and I and council office, employee services, and the commissioner's office have been working together. We were working during the budget season and actually just had another conversation today. However, that number is certainly going to have to go up. That's not sustainable. They wanted to leave that as it was for 2025 and do a little bit more thorough analysis of where the expenses are going, particularly with the transition of our clinic. We went from one company to another.
Gotcha.
So that there is going to have to be change implemented. We recognize that our current fund balance, the ending fund balance was beneath where it needed to be substantially. So it is in the works.
Yeah, and keep me in mind, I didn't have a chance to look. Do we have a self-insurance reserve fund? And we had our reserve within 4,700. Now, my standard is we have both in most counties. We have $3 million in Hancock. In Hendricks, it's about $3 million in the self-insurance reserve fund. And then we have a reserve balance in 4,700. And the self-insurance reserve fund, I mean, I've had $1 million baby that we had to pay out on in Shelby County and in 1 year. And unfortunately, there was a lot of need, and that really blew through their self-insurance reserve fund. but you can't call it a rainy day fund. There can only be one rainy day fund in the state of Indiana. So we call it the self-insurance reserve fund. And so we normally fund that up to around $3 million for the unknown and have that as a buffer. But your self-imposed reserve fund within your balance of 4,700 is drying up quick.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we had talked about was we wanted to try and get our fund 4,700 where it needed to be, and then the next step would be to create that reserve fund because we're trying not to overextend as much, but and like do a huge
but there's the answer about when you see a big balance. Is the balance big enough? Maybe not, because you haven't well funded certain other reserves. Okay. And so I really want to look at that. And I'd still, maybe this year we put a little bit over there in a self-insurance reserve fund, because we're going to run out of it in 4,700. And once that happens, guess what? It reverts back to the general fund because that's the big granddaddy fund, right? So you will suck it out of there anyways. So.
I see Councilor Iverson has his hand up. Go ahead.
That was my question, was one of timing. I mean, I think these are all great plans, and I'm looking at some of these revenue projections, and they're a little iffy. So it's good to hear that within the year we might be able to take some of these steps.
I think we do it before budget time or during budget time. I mean, because that's when we're going to right size our 18-month budget.
Yeah, okay.
And that's when you're going to put in, hopefully the approval for the excess levy and some things like that. And, so I think those are important because that 4,700 will get you really fast. And remember, it's on a fiscal year renewal. So it's not real. I think we decided it was September, which is almost every one of them. And so you'll hit a higher spend out in October, November, and December. And that if it goes up, that 3 months can catch you pretty quick.
That is why this contract is worthwhile.
Yeah.
Councilor Wiltz, did you have a question?
Well, about the health insurance issue, we did just switch to a new clinic provider, and you indicated that you were getting more information and collecting more data before deciding what to do. Do you feel like you're going to have enough data in the next 6-8 months?
That is the hope, and that's what we anticipate.
Okay.
So, yes, at like the 6-month mark of being with this clinic, we should have a better idea of where expenses are going to fall. And there's always those anomalies where we have like larger expenses for various reasons. So, regardless, we're aware that the balance is not where it needs to be, and that needs to be corrected. So there's insurance costs are going to raise. That's unavoidable.
And
it's just how substantially.
And I also want to remind the council for 2025, this is the first year that we actually budgeted within the self-insurance. We had never done that before, and setting appropriations for certain expenses that they're doing, because basically what would happen is they had an expense line, and so they would pay their claim out. So what we did was we set different account lines for different things so that we can see where the most is coming out, and how can we budget better moving forward. So hopefully with at least a 6-month kind of review, we can see how to budget for the following year. So, and we've been working with, the employee services and Angie with regards to setting all of that up. So for this year.
So stay tuned. It'll be coming to a theater near you.
Good to have you back, Kim Shell.
Thank you.
So number 5D, I think the auditor suggests some cuts, travel, training, those type of things. And again, I think what we, you always want to have good training. That one's a toughie. And, because let's face it, AI is coming to a theater or already is here. Yeah. And so, now whether it's productive yet, that's the big key. Yeah, or is it just taking up more of our time? And so, Chat GTP 4, I love, and those help. But there's things like that we've got to. So survey department, 5E, I always say, a lot of my counties, I'll say, if we're going to give a 3% in 26, you got to find the 3% within your budget. Now, I'll have 5 out of 10 say we can't cut anything. But the other thing is you can 5 out of 10. Okay. And I believe this is not council. This is not commissioner. This is the community of Monroe County. And all department heads and all council members and all commissioners, it's called a team approach. And that's what it takes. Okay. And so, I go to my stakeholders and say, tell me what I can do. Where is the fat in your budget? Because in the sustainability I had shown in the past, you spent about 96%. What is catching up with you is that you're spending more closer to 100% because it's more salary oriented.
Right.
That's why.
So essentially what you're basically we could be doing or thinking about 2026 budgets right now.
Absolutely.
We should be doing
like
that
I said,
right now.
January 1st.
Absolutely. Okay.
You manage your 25 budget like I'm going to call it a business because it's a very expensive business, big business. And as you're managing your 25, everything you do in your 25 falls over into your 26. So you really kind of have to manage both years because when you put that salary increase, it's there to stay because as we talked about Friday, we're not saying people leave the ship, abandon the ship because we're going to lay off people. That is the last recourse. What we are saying, though, is are we going to have to batten down the hatch? Yes. Okay. So you got to manage it in a, and Standard & Poor's say, if you're trying to run your local government by 1 year budget, DLGF budget, you have really missed the management mold. Okay. You missed the boat. You are not a AA community. There's no doubt about it. If you aren't managing it in that way. So, okay.
Henry.
Yeah, thank you, President Crossley. So this is more of a comment, more than a question, though, Greg. I'm happy to hear what your thoughts might be on this. So on the 5B about the de-appropes, I mentioned this on the Friday call as well, that in terms of behaviors we're seeing with some of the line item movements of moving things out of travel already by staff or by departments that have already identified that travel in their budget back in August, September timeframe. This is something I'd like to scrutinize a little bit more. I mean, and I know that even just looking at the consent agenda tonight, we moved some travel money around without really discussing it. But those are very micro conversations, but it is those travel line items bit by bit that we probably need to look at a little more closely moving forward if we're going to implement some ideas about de-appropriation. I see. I'm kind of curious your thoughts about that if we're that granular right now. Yeah.
Let's look at all other services and charges, what I call the old 3,000 series, because remember 1,000 is payroll, 2,000 is supply and whatever, and usually those are used. 3,000 is the category of all the other stuff. Okay, we don't really have 4,000s anymore. We don't have capital outlays, do you?
We have a few.
A few. Well, we're going to have to migrate those to the CCD or to the GO bond.
We have already done that.
Good.
We work with the commissioner's office with regards to capital purchases. So if it doesn't meet that criteria, then it has to come out of the fund, not the CCD.
So that's the 4,000, which is capital outlay, but scrutinize the 3,000, and I like to say, if we start now, maybe we catch it before someone spends it. Because, a lot of times they'll be like, well, if I don't spend it, I'm going to lose it. Well, that's a bad path to go down, because also I'm going to say we may need that help in order to find the salary. Yes, Marty. Okay, got it.
Okay, there are times that we need to use that capital line in different budgets because the departments don't always walk hand in hand with kind of
Mike's not
months
on.
we went through. I'm just,
And keep in mind,
You
the
know what I'm talking
4,000s are pretty limited in the general fund. And remember, you got to be kind of careful because there's a lot of highway and those type things. And you got to keep your comments specific to the fund almost.
right.
You know, so keep that in mind. Don't use my global comment as necessarily covering each and every department, because as you know, highway is funded by highway, not highway taxes and not property taxes. But you know, right now they're redoing that whole formula, and I didn't even go down that snake trail. But you know, it's really going to be interesting if we get more money or less money when they do the highway bill. So.
And then I know Councilmember Decker had a question here, and I'm looking to see if we could maybe all right, so we're gonna take his comment, wrap it up, because we got other agenda items that we need to get to.
Sure, I'll be really quick. Sorry I missed some of this, but I will go back and look at the tape, but thank you very much. One comment I will make as we head into these discussions and this process is I hope that our comments are getting, of course, to our legislature friends. I know that some of them watch our CATS recordings, and I appreciate the ones that do. Ones that don't, maybe watch our CATS recordings, because potential changes to us, what we do, can affect local services. There was a very good Herald Times article today in the paper about ambulance service. And one of the things it discusses is the last time we were kind of in a lot of us weren't, some of us were in a tough pickle on making decisions about what we fund, what we don't fund. I will never cast aspersions at a previous council. I'll never doubt anything that folks do, but local government gets into situations where they have to choose between what gets funded and what doesn't, and then we have unintended consequences that later become things that people go, golly, how did that happen? That sucks. My message to our legislative friends is this is where local government happens. Again, I think I used the metaphor the other day that when you need an ambulance, it's irony, this is the discussion, when you need an ambulance, it's a local ambulance that comes. It's not a cabinet level secretary that's making $200,000 a year. If we want to do cuts, I can go help the governor with that. So I just think that we've got to be very careful that departments listening right now, thinking about what they do to train their people, go to conferences, serve people, figure out the problems they have. In the last 20 minutes, I had some very strong bipartisan interagency discussions with some of our best law enforcement while I was kind of running around a little bit. We want to make sure that when those needs happen, that happens. And I want that message not to get lost. So legislators that might be tuning into this, as we wrinkle our hands and think about this, our eyes are on you too.
Yeah, and I can't reiterate enough that, you know, I went up there and talked about, I testified on a couple of things, and I've had some people from Liberty Township, and they were like, we didn't know all that. You know, they're kind of, you know, God bless them, but you know, it's kind of tough because they've got to consume a heck of a lot of information, and quite frankly, they're probably not getting all the story. And here is where the rubber meets the road. And you might say, you know, wow, you know, they've got some money in the bank. Well, that's not so bad. So, sure.
Well, we appreciate you coming down in person and speaking with us. That was very informative, and definitely we'll go back to take a look at it and advise anybody else. But we appreciate it and look forward to working with you this year.
Well, thank you. And I'll be working with the work group, and we'll start on phase 2, so to speak, or step 2. So,
thank you so much. This is the part of the agenda that we actually were going to have a little bit of a recess. I still think that we kind of need to take it because the energy that I'm feeling in the room right now seems a little ugh. So I'm going to take liberty to say, in light of everything that we've just heard, maybe we kind of need to shake some nerves off in here. I'm going to ask for us to take just a quick 5-minute break, and I appreciate everybody's patience. We just need to just kind of gather composure here right now. And so I ask promptly that we start back up here at 6:45. So council, I will hold you to task. We will see everybody back up at this dais at 6:45. So just taking a quick recess. Here, we again appreciate everybody's patience. And now hopefully everybody feels compelled to get back into our business of the council, starting with
What did it flip them?
item number 8.
Council, I move to approve the prosecutor's request in Fund 9159-9624 High Tech Crimes Unit for the creation of new account lines as outlined on the agenda, and to simultaneously approve an additional appropriation of $153,744.49 in the services category.
Second.
I just want to make sure because it looked like we were muted. Were we?
For a moment.
Do I need to reread the motion?
Let me check.
It probably wouldn't hurt. I would.
Nope, it's on here.
Oh, okay. All right.
Great.
So we had a motion. Now we had a second. We are getting back in the business. Everybody just needs to have a Snickers and a Coke. So with that being said, at least that might be me. We have Ms. Hamlin.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
This is a request to appropriate grant funding. I want to clarify it's not an additional appropriation from County General. For our high-tech crimes unit, this is funded by the state through our Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council in a grant. Our high-tech crimes unit is overseen by Prosecutor Erica Oliphant. It's directed by Levi Minnick, and it's housed at the Ellettsville Police Department. The purpose of the high-tech crimes unit is to extract and forensically analyze digital media, computer, phones, to extract evidence and bring that forward for prosecutors in matters of criminal prosecution. Our high-tech crimes unit covers an 11-county area, and this is a request to appropriate funding for 2025.
Thank you. All right, looking to council here and seeing if anybody has any questions or comments. Right? Nope. Okay, Councilor Deckard.
We've had this now 3 years.
I think it's 4 years. I think this might even be, the 4th year, I think.
All right. Now that we don't have any other questions from council, if anybody would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please go ahead and come forth to the Nat U Hill room at the lectern here, or raise your hand via Teams. And seeing no takers, may we please have a roll call vote?
Yes.
Counselor Henry.
Yes.
Counselor Feidel.
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz.
Yes.
Counselor Crossley.
Yes.
Counselor Deckard.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you.
I do want to make, that's okay. I'm just, for the record, I'm just want to state that Counselor Hawk has left the meeting, so.
Just like Elvis. Okay. All right. And again, thank you so much, Ms. Hamlin, for staying a little extra. All right. You don't have to apologize. It's okay. Things happen. So everybody needs to practice grace at this point. So we are tabling items again, as we discussed earlier. Items 9A and B are tabled. And now we will move on to item number 10, which is courts.
Council, as a reminder, due to a no vote at the February 11th meeting, this is the second reading for this request. I move to approve the court's request to update job descriptions and to simultaneously amend the 2025 salary ordinance in Fund 1000-0225 General Fund Courts and Fund 1114-0225 Lit Special Purpose Courts as outlined on the agenda with an effective date of February 9th, 2025.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second, and I see Judge Dekoff is here. Good evening. Thank you again for your patience.
Thank you very much for having us. We're just reiterating what we did 2 weeks ago and ask you to approve this. And if you have any questions or anything, please ask us, but otherwise.
Back down memory lane, for folks that might be watching, this was something that was done in the pipeline for a long time ago. This was something that was done back in 2024. It was delayed. This process came forward to PAC. PAC approved it, and now it's sitting here at council for us to consider to vote on approval. So I just want to make sure that we are all knowing, just in case if there's anybody that's watching or will watch for future reference, this isn't something that just got spun and is brand new, and this is also something that was in the works for a really long time. So I just wanted to make sure that I took the liberty and the privilege to go ahead and do so and let folks know that this is something that was in the works. So just wanted to, and I hope I got that right.
Yes, thank you. It began back in the summer of 2024, had not been reviewed since 2005, and then we got permission to keep on with the process because it was a time-consuming process, and then bring it back in front of the council in February of this year. So yes, we appreciate that, but this has been a lengthy process looking at all of the classifications because they had not been done since 2005.
Duly noted, and that's 20 years ago. All right. Looking again to see if folks have any kind of questions. Looking, Councilor Iverson.
Just as I said when this came up last time, in today's packet, we have republished not only WIS's recommendation, but also the fiscal impact, as well as organizational charts and a record of PAC's votes. So that way everyone in the public knows exactly what's been going on, what the fiscal impact is, and where these kind of align within the organizational chart of the courts. So that's good reading for folks.
All right, looking to my left here for any questions? Nope. All right. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, so now if you have any comments, we'll take public comment on this. If you have any public comment that needs to be made on this agenda item, come forward to the Nat U Hill room here at the lectern or raise your hand via Teams. And seeing none, maybe please have a roll call vote.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Counselor Henry?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Feidel?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you for that. And now we will go to next item B.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Oh, wait.
You got one more.
Got one more.
Oh, wait.
Item B is the deputy court administrator.
Sorry, that's right. I forgot. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay. We're lengthening a lengthy process.
No, I'm thinking it was all together. Your rules are different than my rules sometimes. So I'm so sorry.
No,
I gotta switch into the other branch of government. Sorry.
All right, go ahead.
So as a reminder, due to no vote in the February 11th meeting, this is the second reading for this request. I move to approve the court's request to update the deputy court administrator job description and to simultaneously amend the 2025 salary ordinance and fund 1000-0225 general fund courts as outlined on the agenda with an effective date of February 9th, 2025.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. And is there anything that you would like to add to this?
No, I was just going to say we had to do this one separate because we had WIS redo the recommendation because they kind of some of the stuff we had on there, and then they did approve that it should be, but we had to separate the two.
All right, and same as before. Again, this was something that was done in the pipeline a long time ago. Don't need to get back into that, and if you need to watch it, you can go ahead and do so. All right, any questions from council? Nope, seeing none. Now we'll take public comment for this. If you have public comment, please come forward to the Nat U Hill room here at the lectern or raise your hand via Teams. And seeing none, maybe please have a roll call vote.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor Feidel?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Henry? Yes. Counselor McKim?
Oh, sorry.
There's a typo. Councilor Iverson.
My answer is yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Former Councilmember Kim.
Yes.
All right. All right. Thank you so
my
much.
gosh.
We again appreciate that. And, man, if we could have a blooper reel, this would be
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
It's
Well,
been an interesting evening.
It has. It has. We need laughter. All right. Now moving on to item number 11, the legal department.
Council, I move to approve Resolution 2025-12, authorizing payment for council member training out of the Elected Official Training Fund.
Second.
All right. We got a motion and a second, and I'm going to look to Ms. Molly Turner King.
So this resolution is to authorize payment for the expenses related to counselors attending the AIC conference on the 4th and 5th out of the Elected Official Training Fund. There's a new subsection to that statute, and new-ish in the last year or so, that says you can pay for elected officials who are doing their statutory training, such as like the auditor has to do annual training. You can pay for designees, but for county council members, there has to be a determination that there's enough funds in the account or that account line to pay for all of the funding that we're supposed to, and thus allow payment for AIC conferences. So that's what this is.
Okay. Any questions? Councilor Iverson.
In the now therefore be it resolved clause, it mentions only the specific dates of February 4th and February 5th. So are we to interpret this contract as we'll have to do this every single time? That's part of the code, right?
Correct. So the code specifically provides that this fund can be used for payment of state-called meetings or AIC conferences for county council members, and you have to make the determination that the fund is sufficient to pay for the training. So I limited the resolution to those dates because if you attend future trainings, I would like to evaluate the fund at that time to see if there's sufficient funding.
Given the conversation we just had with FSG, that makes a lot of sense.
Councilor Wiltz.
And evaluate the fund, is that your discretion, or is that who evaluates the fund?
I should have included fund information. I did get numbers from the auditor, and I'm gonna see if she can give them to you now.
Fine. I was just curious whose job it was to make that determination.
It is the council's determination. So
we get to decide if there's enough money to fund our travel out of that fund.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So I think the question is then, how do they get that information? So maybe there should be something that either the auditor or the council staff would send a report? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, council, current fund balance of the county elected official training fund is $81,767.41. Now, I looked at this, gosh, it's probably been a month or so now, and it has trended down just slightly in the past few years. However, I mean, there's still a reasonable fund balance, and your travel can definitely be supported and trained.
Who typically, like, I seem to recall this is managed like by the recorder or something. Is that right?
That is correct. This fund is managed by the recorder, and some recorder fees go in there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a question, Madam President. So again, I'll keep saying I'm the new person for a few more weeks. We had some travel by other elected officials in the previous year or 2 years ago for offsites out of state. I believe Arizona was one of those locations by the commissioners at the time. And so is the process similar to this where we'd be approving after the fact travel, or has that changed under code for the purpose of drawing down on this particular fund?
I don't think that travel would be payable out of this fund because this fund is limited to statutory mandated training. So training for newly elected officials and then specifically for the case of county council's AIC meetings.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Good question. All right. Anybody else? Any additional questions? Nope. Okay. Now that we will go ahead and move to public comment. If you have public comment on this item, please come forward to the lectern here at the Nat U Hill Room or raise your hand via Teams. And seeing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Counselor Feidel?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Counselor Henry?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to item B.
Council, I move to approve Resolution 2025-09, requesting the establishment of a council donation fund.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Ms. Turner-King.
This resolution, if passed, will be forwarded to the commissioners, and the request would be that they establish a fund by ordinance to receive donations made to the county council. Specifically for this year, this fund is anticipated to receive donations and contributions collected in memory of Cheryl Munson by the Community Foundation. So we'll receive those and we need a fund to put them in. And so this is that fund.
Because the understanding is you can't mix the donations with county general fund.
Correct. And
Okay.
the ordinance will specify the use for the funds in that account, and then will be available for county council use only for those purposes.
Got it. Okay. Seems fair. All right, looking to my right over here for any questions or comments. Counselor Iverson.
This is so wonderful to see something commemorating Councilor Munson's long-standing work in this community for the benefit of the residents. Particularly, I'm so happy to hear that donations are being made, and I'm looking forward to seeing these donations go to the benefit of Monroe County residents. This is a wonderful thing, and I'll certainly be supporting this. I certainly missed Councilmember Munson, and I couldn't be happier to see her name associated with this.
All right, Counselor Wiltz.
Just to make sure that this is clear for myself and others, this will be a permanent fund established in perpetuity to accept any types of donations that are meant for the Sophia Travis specifically, or for council projects.
I also the ordinance, if this is passed, would indicate that the funds would be available for use to receive any donations from any person, firm, corporation, other legal entity, or volunteer association, with the intended recipient being the county council, and that the funds will be available for used to support council functions, including but not limited to community grant projects. So it includes Sophia Travis, but it would not be limited to Sophia Travis. We do anticipate a Sophia Travis donation this year, and I was just looking at my email. The Community Foundation had indicated to me in early January that they would be stopping the donations, the opportunity to make donations at the end of the month. And at the time that they indicated, or they sent this email to me, they indicated that there is $2,950.39 of donations.
That's great. Thank you.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh, it's so heartwarming. Well,
All right, Counselor Deckard.
I appreciate very much everybody that did the research to get us to this point, and also the Community Foundation for stepping forward in some wee hours of the night to make this happen. They routinely show up for a lot of strange, diverse needs that are things that can seem strange to others, but are so important in the scheme of things, and they make things happen. And in this example, a primary example for us, it's hard to figure out how to accept a donation as a government. We can take property taxes for a house. It's harder for us to accept the house or proceed from the house. And this is an ability to do it. That our friend Cheryl Munson's name is associated with it in a wonderful way. And those donations coming in is just true icing on the cake as a community figures out all the different ways we can remember our friend.
All right. Anybody else? No. Counselor.
I would like for us to consider, and it doesn't have to be tonight, we can talk about it at another time, but to consider maybe having the purpose of this fund or such a fund be for the Sophia Travis grants. It seems that would be something that would honor Cheryl in an appropriate way and allow community members to contribute to something that they've seen a very transparent process year after year after year and kind of is familiar to folks. So I'm throwing that out there for our consideration.
That's a good consideration. Councilor Iverson.
I completely agree, and I thank Ms. Turner King for including language that references community service grants into this ordinance. I think that really captures, I think, the intent of what this council would like.
So I do have a clarifying question. In the now therefore be it resolved clause, it says to support county functions including but not limited to community service grants. Is it the will of the council to just limit it to community service grants, or do you want to leave it more open? And the only reason I'm asking is because if this passes, I'm going to put the ordinance creation on the commissioner's agenda, and in the ordinance I have to specify the reason.
Thoughts?
Well, typically I would say let's not limit ourselves on future projects that we might do, but that's not the business we're in, really. And I think there's really one thing that we do that fits with this, and that's the Sophia Travis Grants Program, and that was very much Cheryl's thing. I think kicking off a dedicated fund for that with contributions made in her name, it just feels right to me. And we can always create another fund should we need the public support for another project.
Councilor Henry.
It sounds like that's almost a motion to amend to make it happen, and I'd happily second that, Councilor Wiltz.
I moved it, even though I didn't say it the right way.
We got a motion and a second on item B. Any more discussion?
Well, can I clarify the motion?
Of course you can.
I believe the motion is to strike in the now therefore be it resolved clause the language that says to support council functions including but not limited to. Remove that language and just have it read to support community service grants.
We say to support the community service grant program, then name it.
I guess that is a council question. If you would like to specifically name the Sophia Travis grant, or if you just want to leave it open to community service grants in the event that maybe another grant is created that benefits the community.
It would probably be best to specify Sophia Travis, considering that's what she.
That would be my preference.
That was her baby, and so I think that would just do it justice. That if we just specified for that particular reason. Any other questions or comments on that?
So I think that having the specificity is in order, and then if other projects come up you want to fund, you can always have an additional fund for that. Yes.
So if it's okay, I would like to read the now therefore be it resolved clause as it reads now, and then perhaps there will be a motion to adopt the amended language. So now therefore be it resolved by the Monroe County Council, Monroe County, Indiana, that the Monroe County Council requests the Board of Commissioners by ordinance establish a dedicated non-reverting fund that shall be maintained separate and apart from all other funds of Monroe County to receive any and all donations made to Monroe County to support the Sophia Travis Community Service Grant Program.
Yes, I move that.
So seconded.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any council comments, questions? All right, seeing none. Ms. Turner King, this is something that we can do by voice vote, right?
No, it's a resolution.
That's right, that's right. Okay, so now we get to do a roll call vote, but we probably got to go to public comment.
You voting on the amendment or the?
Oh. Yes,
It
we're
was
voting
the
on the amendment.
amendment. Right.
Amendment, yes.
Right,
Voice
but we
vote.
still need to make public comment. All right, anybody that wants to make public comment on this amendment, please come forward to the Nat U Hill Room here at the lectern or raise your hand via Teams. Seeing no movement in this room and seeing no yellow raised hands on Teams, maybe please have a roll call vote.
You can do, this is a voice vote for the
amendment, but the resolution as a whole has to have, that's right.
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. All right, now we go back to the bigger picture of the resolution.
As amended?
As amended. That is correct. Thank you.
Counselor Henry,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Fidel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Is awesome. Thank you so much for that. All right, moving on. We got item C. Oh, yeah, that is me. Now I would like to open the discussion for a contract with Wagner, Irwin, and Sheely. I would like to have our legal counsel, Ms. Turner King, give an update on this.
So I can join the Teams meeting and put this up if you'd like, but in essence, we don't have an active contract with Wagner, Irwin, and Sheely. The last one we had was when the rehaul of the job descriptions were done, and that was some time ago. So I would like to get a more up-to-date contract in place for Wagner, or I'm just gonna call it WIS because I never call it Wagner, Irwin, and Sheely. And so I drafted a contract based off of language that was in their engagement letter when they did the job description salary ordinance rehaul. And so it's a discussion item for council today to see if you're okay with that language, if you'd like to change that any of that language, if you want to add anything to it. So that's kind of where we're at.
Any questions? I'm gonna start down here. Councilor Fidel?
Yes, so I was looking at the agreement and I noted that the amount in number 2 was missing. So I don't know if that would be discussing as well as the term itself in number 3.
I left the amount and the term blank because I didn't know if you wanted it to be a 1-year contract, a 2-year contract, or what term you wanted it to be. And then obviously the amount would be fact dependent on the term.
I would like the specificity of whatever it is we're going to do. So if we can figure that out, that would be more comfortable.
Part of the discussion, I think. And I can pull up the last one to see the term.
As she's doing that, does anybody have any comment about the 1 year, 2 year, any term, any suggestions?
Have they had contracts before the one before this one? And how long were they? How long were previous contracts?
I thought they were a year.
They've been a year, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how many years has it been that they've had a contract with them?
Quite a long time.
I want to say it was 2008.
That they've been doing this?
I think so.
The last time we had a contract.
Oh.
It was when they
But,
first established.
I mean, we've
the-
had them, and I'm not sure about contracts prior to our 2021. So, but yeah, our 2021 is the last.
I went back and reviewed contracts to 2016 and I couldn't find a contract prior. The one contract I did find was from 2020. And it was for, and now the amount is a little higher because it includes the salary analysis and the rehaul, but it was for $98,000. And that was a 9 to 10 month term contract, which I assume is the time frame that WIS said it would take to do the salary study. And so it wasn't even a year.
That was a very...
I'm sorry, it took longer.
Yeah, it did. It did. That was a very specific project.
Yes.
Whereas this is more of a general services. Yeah.
Councilor Iverson.
My initial reaction would be a 2-year contract. And my rationale is that 1 year doesn't seem quite long enough because so much seems to happen within 1 year, but not quite all the departments seem to come forward in the PAC process. 2 years gives enough kind of churn, it seems like, in the PAC process for multiple departments or a significant percentage of Monroe County departments to come forward such that WIS might be able to have a flavor of what changes need to be made. I will also mention that in the contract, there is no scope of work that defines, how to redo the process at the end of the contract, or if we want to be, what exactly happens at the end of the contract in terms of reviewing the entire system. But I guess let me just keep it to what you asked for, Madam President, which is my gut is a 2-year contract.
Anybody else have any thoughts right now?
Well, go ahead. So I'm wondering about feedback on their performance, I guess. So the contractors, right? How is it that we, I didn't see it in here. Maybe if Molly can let me know I missed it, but is there anything in here that states that we get some sort of evaluation of what their work is and we're happy with it and it should go on? Or is there some kind of term for that where we can, like every 6 months or every year, or whatever it's going to be, right? Is there some evaluative process of what it is, the work they're doing for us?
I haven't included a clause to that effect, but I could easily add something under one scope of project to perhaps indicate that WIS can do quarterly, biannual meetings with us to review the work that they have done and to receive feedback if that is the desire of the council.
In a previous life, we did something like this, and it might have been called some sort of mutual gains, right? So you have one party that has an interest and another party that has another interest. And so if you bring them together, then you're mutually discussing the things that are going on in your agreement.
Like somebody had their hand up over here. Councilor Deckert?
When I think about it, I think a 2-year contract probably makes a decent amount of sense. Number one, I appreciate that Councilor Iverson has got a strong feel for the PAC process and the next iterations of PAC, where that's going, and that's a hard ocean to surf, and he's kind of figured that out. One thing I'll say is if we were to determine, as Councilor Feidel is saying, in the review process, this is not going so hot or going well, I bet my mortgage it would take us 2 years as a council to replace it, at least. 2's probably optimistic. I do think there's other options, but we've had WIS moments in the past where we got a little hot under the collar, but we've also had struggles and difficulties, but that was a different era. So I would say 2 might be a safe bounce around for it.
Councilor Iverson?
And I would just point out, I think that Councilmember Feidel's additions are really helpful. I think that's a great point. And I would also point out that this contract does allow for modification, such that should we be in the midst of a term and we get appropriate feedback, modification by both parties can happen. So I think this is a sound way to do things.
So I'm kind of live editing the agreement on the screen. I went ahead and added that the contract shall terminate on December 31st of 2026. I was consulting with Michelle to see what we budget annually for WIS, and we budget $28,000. So for the price, I would put not to exceed, and I could either do it one or two ways: do a total for the 2 years, or say not to exceed more than $28,000 for any given year within the term of the contract.
I would think it would make sense to add the total. I like the breakdown of the annual, because then you kind of get kind of a check-in point after that. You've spent that $28,000, and you know, both sides know that they're bound to that, right? Or there's language that says that's what we've agreed to, and so there's kind of a touch base point where you could go on there from and think about the second year then and restarting that 28,000 again. But I like the idea of splitting it up annually in that amount.
Councilor Wiltz?
I have a question / concern about getting an understanding of how much it costs to do their work. So I understand, I mean, I think I expressed this to you when we had a conversation a while back, but and that might be something that doesn't show up in the contract, but I would like to have a better understanding when we ask them to do a review of a job description, with a classification, and then a recommendation. What does that cost us? And so what is this contract representing in terms of the amount of work that they produce for us? And I know that it depends on who works on it, because they're set up with, you know, if Joe works, it's his per hour rate, and if Fred works, it's theirs. But to me, that's their problem, not mine. I would like to have an idea, like a consistent, I don't care who works on it, but tell me, like, either on average and kind of, you know, let's hold them to the on average. Let's just kind of keep a running record in our minds, or, you know, work with them to give us a better idea of what the service costs ahead of time. I just feel very uncomfortable with this whole, like, the not to exceed is great, but I would like to know when we ask them for something, if we can have an idea of what it's going to cost.
See, the auditor has her hand up. I pulled up the most recent invoice, and this is for services rendered October and November. And the notes are consultation with WIS staff on clarification or classification requests, communication with WIS staff and council personnel about exempt salary threshold and reclassification, and then consultation with WIS staff on health classification reviews. So it looks like the total time spent was 2.25 hours, and, well, no, that's not accurate. There are a few invoices combined here. There's December itemized billing as well. It looks like it's just different formats. But the total for, looks like 3 months was about $5,700 for those projects. That helps at all.
Any idea on the number of specific things they did? I mean, how many item kind of things did they do?
I think that invoice is referencing the public defender job classifications, the courts, and maybe some health.
Some health, yes.
Yeah, it's probation, employee services, veterans,
Yeah, because that was
courts,
October and November. Mm-hmm.
And public defender. Yeah.
I see Counselor Henry had his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to echo Councilor Wiltz's questions about the contract, because I had similar questions about what in the scope, how much the scope items cost. And so as I'm looking at it, it looks like time and materials is based on what the invoice says, right? This is our billable rate for the work that we did in these items A through G. I guess my question related to this is this the standard language in a WIS contract that they provide in terms of the services, or have we added services over the years for certain line items here that we expect locally?
It's a combination of both. I pulled some of the language from their last engagement letter based on the salary analysis, and then I updated some of the language based on the nature of the requests that we normally ask them about. So it's a combination of both. I will add, I have not provided this to WIS yet. I kind of wanted to get an idea from the council as to what council expectations would be, and then I was going to provide it to WIS and have a conversation with them to see if they would amend any of the language. So this contract is going to come back to council again.
As a follow-up, as we have an opportunity to do contract modification, I don't want to speak for the rest of council, but my hunch or suspicion that I think some may share here is that if we do find ourselves in increasingly tight fiscal environments, that we may want to trim some activities here out, and understanding what those costs are for some of these line items might be useful, but not necessarily necessary at this moment, in my view. But I'd definitely like to know that for mods down the road, I think.
Councilor Iverson.
I think the last thing I want to say on this contract, which thank you again for drafting this.
You guys are muted again.
We're good. Okay. We are okay. My words are appearing in the chat. Okay. Thank you for drafting this contract, and I will again point out that not only the information that we got from FSG this evening, as well as the next agenda item, means that we're probably not going to be coming close to our do not exceed number. So I just want to provide that as some perspective as PAC president.
And we set the do not exceed number based on what we budget. We could always set it lower if that makes the council more comfortable, so that you're coming back if you know.
Okay. So I did a really quick kind of addition here. So in 2022, we spent $7,546 to WIS. In 2023, we did $12,588. And then for 2024, we've done $15,263. Both of those 2 years, we did like complete department overhauls. So you can expect more when it comes to you're going to do an entire department. So that's where the expense comes into, is they're going to spend a lot more time with all these. So like if you're submitting like one job description, it's not near as much, depending on what Molly and I or whoever can provide to WIS ahead of time. We try to do as much on our end before we even get it to WIS. I mean, I'm like retyping the job descriptions. We're helping them fill out the forms. I'm doing the org charts, based on this. So I'm trying to do as much as I can on our end to lessen that cost. So, but that's the overall total. So we have not exceeded that 28,000. We've come, the most we've done in the last 3 years is 15.
So, last 2 years, you haven't exceeded it.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So I think 28,000 is reasonable. But if we get into where we're going to do large department overhauls, and I would have to go back and look real quick, we just got a bill in, so with regards to the courts. So if you wanted to like pull that out, because that's one that's been going on since June. So, you'd have to go back and do that kind of thing. I think we went and did just the public defender with regards to 6 positions, and it totaled, how much was it? 10,000, what was it?
Don't recall, but I don't think it was that high.
Well, okay, it's like, what did we do? But it was quite a bit.
Councilor Wiltz.
I think I would be comfortable, especially given what we heard tonight about, trying to not over budget, so that we don't have all of this ambiguity in what our anticipated spending is. Maybe lower the amount, the not to exceed amount. I have no problem if a department wants a major overhaul, them checking in with the full council before doing so, and that's what it would require. So I don't want to micromanage too much, but I also kind of want to, rein in a little bit of the WIS is just this bottomless reserve of services that doesn't cost any extra because we budgeted.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I appreciate that very much too. If we get to a level to where we have to say, evaluating the WIS dollars at the $28,000 level, if we get to that point, one point I want to offer to counselors, and again, for anyone watching this, listening to a county figure out cuts, here's what this truly means to me. We will no longer be able to use this service or replace this service internally, because we couldn't get, for $28,000, we couldn't get somebody to probably make chicken noises in the rotunda of this courthouse for any number of hours. We're just not. We will spend, on an employee, we will spend $28,000 just getting up out of the interview and walking to the door, going through the training, going through those things. We will have to abandon this. And again, for folks watching out there, legislatures, other people use WIS, they will also abandon this as well. And then in about 15, 20 years, someone will go, you know what we need? We need someone that establishes standards across departments, and each county should have that. And then someone will act like they invented it. Someone will start the firm, and we'll start this process all over again. Meanwhile, not one state agency's cut a job. So I'm just, if we get to that level, what that will mean is us evaluating, we do this or we don't do this anymore. And we go back to the unequal days where, well, prosecutors are the favorite. I'm picking on Beth Hanlon because she's watching us. Prosecutors' favorite, but Weights and Measures doesn't speak up enough, and so therefore maybe those are out of whack. And so all these things that have costs can't always be replaced. And I always think about that with services, because I'd love to bring things in-house. I just know for in-house, I can't. For $28,000, I won't get anything.
Sorry, you couldn't pay me enough to do this in-house.
And we previously had this in-house, and that's what led to the need for the WIS salary analysis.
Yeah. So it seems like Councilor Henry has wants to say something, and I'm gonna try to get us kind of back at the end here because we got a bigger discussion and it's been late. So,
Madam President, I don't want to belabor this other than to say that, a maturation model in our HR practice would be to eventually have that in-house, because our current HR practice is benefits focused only and not under the auditor. It's not under some of the other more comprehensive activities we would expect to see in a HR office in a county of our size. So I would maybe argue that we could be down the road where this would be absorbed in a 5 to 10 year period in-house, though that cost model would be more expensive. But we know that we're not maximizing our current opportunities in-house with that based on some of the structures the county's adopted in HR practice over the past decade. I think it's just worth pointing that out. And I would easily sing in the rotunda for 28 grand as a chicken. Thanks.
So, final comment I will make is I do think that the 2 years is something that we should do. I also like the idea that Councilor Friedel had mentioned about some type of kind of coming back and trying to make sure that we are happy with their existence with us and how we move forward. Because I know in the past, not to belabor, but we have had departments very disappointed and upset, and they've come back to council, and we've kind of
overrode what they've done. So I do think that that is something that is there. And also because we can't keep talking about everybody, budget cuts and we're not doing the same as well. So I think that's something, if we can walk and chew gum along with our departments of, trying to figure out cuts, then I think this is also something that we can do in terms of, if we're not happy, then just cut it. So I'm gonna look to Ms. Turner King to see if there's anything else that you need from us.
I don't know. I think I'll schedule a meeting with WIS, kind of get some more information, incorporate it into some perhaps modifications to the agreement, and then bring this back.
All right, I appreciate that. All right, council. Again, moving us on the agenda because we still got just a few more things and some of those can take a little bit longer of a discussion. Now we'll move on to item D, and I would like to open up that discussion for Resolution 2025-05, resolution opposing Indiana Senate Bill 1. And again, I look to the table, Ms. Turner King.
This was a resolution that was tabled from February 11th. I've made no changes to it since February 11th. I think consensus was on the 11th was to kind of wait and see. And I didn't know, during the meeting on the 11th, we specifically tabled it to today's date. And so I don't know if you'd want to consider passing it, modify, or table again.
Is there a way that you could bring up what we've had before so we can just kind of see it on screen, just so council members here, if you need to, we can make the changes as needed, if needed. And while we're waiting for Ms. Turner King to pull that up, I just want to give a shout out to this council for actually thinking and doing our job and staying in our lane of being fiscal members here and making sure that, we are watching the State House and what it is that we do, and we set the trend, because I'm thankful that we thought about doing a resolution that opposes this bill. Understand that there are some changes that have been made. There's also rumblings about the governor not being very happy with some of that and a possible veto. We don't know. This is all hearsay. But what we do know is, as I've mentioned in several meetings, right now the federal government and the state government has allowed us as taxpayers here to realize that we are in our FAFO status. And again, if you don't know what that is, you can Google it. But that being said here, we need to do our due diligence to make sure that they also understand that we mean business. We are watching. It's just not Councilor Hawk that's watching as well. We know they'll be back in session here next week. And this is a telltale sign to them to listen to us. And I know 2 weeks ago I made a comment while I had mentioned that, the governor was out here talking to constituents, and I know he was talking to mayors from certain cities and telling people to prove it. And I also had expressed in that meeting that he can come here, or we can go there, it's whatever, that we can go either way, and we can also prove it as well. I know that Ellettsville Town Council also said something very similar, where they also said that they would like to talk to the governor as well to talk about how they can be fiscally responsible as well. And I just say, I'm walking like a talking, and I stand 10 toes down on my 5-foot frame here. And I would say that, as I mentioned in that meeting, I wasn't just going to say something about, yeah, the governor, it might be cute for him to come here. I actually called their office, and I will continue to give updates. And if there's anybody that is watching, as we continue to say tonight, I'm not sure if our meetings get watched as much as what we think they should, but I really would hope so. I hear we have friends that are from Monroe County that are now in the governor's office or lieutenant governor's office. If anybody knows them, and if you're watching, please let them know that we are asking for them to show up to us too. It's not just good to just go talk to people who are in the same voting block as you and you just talk to them. But it's also the good, the bad, the ugly of public service and being an elected official is having those hard conversations with those as well. And you can have those hard conversations with us too. So I'm gladly anytime, anywhere, any place. I am ready to have that conversation. I will continue to make that plea I will continue to talk to my state lawmakers and legislators that represent me to let them know that they too can put pressure. Anybody that's here from Ellisville Town Council that's watching, you can also make the plea, and we can also do this together. I'm ready for this. I think it's about time. And before I say things that might get bleeped out, I'm gonna stop talking here. And I see that you are not Miss Molly Turner King, but I see Kim Shell is here.
No,
So,
Ms. King had to step away for a phone call. So on the screen is the resolution. And if I stall long enough, she'll be back here in just a moment. So, so I didn't know exactly what you wanted. So.
All right.
Guys, so I don't know where we're at in discussion.
They turned it back to me, and so I didn't, and I said that we have it on the screen, so.
Okay. So one of the reasons I suggested the last time is possibly tabling this is specifically because of the whereas clause that's highlighted, because it references a specific amount that Senate Bill 1 could possibly reduce Monroe County budget by. I don't know if that's the case. That number is changing as the amendments go through. And so if you're going to consider adoption of this resolution at this point, I would suggest more vague language there that maybe just says you oppose, if enacted, the proposals that have garnished the most attention would have a significant negative impact on local municipal taxing units, and take out the specific language. And I think that's the only language in there that specifies the amount. So that is one change that I do think needs to be made if you adopt this resolution at this time.
Looks like the second one from the bottom on the sheet I have printed out here also mentions a $25 million amount.
That is correct. I just needed to scroll down a little. Thank you.
Any other, Councilor Henry?
Thank you, Madam President. I will say that, first of all, I appreciate kind of the Eagles' work and Molly's work on getting a draft to this point. It's interesting. I know one of our colleagues isn't here, and she may log on at some point or another, but I also appreciate that maybe getting a unanimous or near unanimous vote on a resolution may require softer language, but frankly, this isn't strident enough for me. I think the state leaders and lawmakers have a party. That party is partisan. That partisan leadership is doing this to communities across the state. And I don't think regardless of the party at a county level, from county to county in the state, there are certainly Republicans on the other side of the aisle in other counties that are looking at the exact same cuts that are going to hurt their community, that maybe feel a little straddled and silenced and expressing their concern that this is not the party that they voted for at the governor's mansion or in the state legislature to deliver these cuts to their community. I would appreciate maybe them stepping up and saying the same thing about their leadership. But we don't go as far as we could as a county that is has a particular target on its back because of the decision makers in Indianapolis, to actually call that out in the third whereas clause about what state leaders and lawmakers and in the partisan manner that they're engaging are making these cuts in our community. And they are hurtful cuts at the end of the day. We could go a little farther and maybe putting some more proof points in there about what this means. Councilor Deckard mentioned earlier, reporting in the local paper this morning about the fact that we are a county that does not fund an EMS service currently. And if we wanted to go back down that path and provide those additional public safety services, like that's the stuff we have to call out in a resolution saying those are where the cuts are hurting us most. The bad news for Indianapolis and the governor might be that government costs money. And in times of inflation, when gas prices go up, we have to pay on a lot of resources as well, the cost of materials, the cost of building stuff, the cost of repairing buildings in our community, capital expenses. We have inflationary pressures just like a business does. And so to not maybe articulate a little more detail about what the proof points are might be a lost opportunity. But having said all that, as is, this is a very good resolution. I think we could go a little farther. It might cost us votes of unanimity, but I just can't imagine not putting some more clarity about the who that's causing these cuts and these painful cuts to our community that will cost us the quality of life that our members in our community expect and deserve in our local government. Thank you.
So my question to you, Counselor Henry, would be, then what would you like for it to say?
Because we're hitting a moving target, I guess the question I would have back to you, Madam President, is at what point do we want to send this to Indianapolis? Is it this week, or are we waiting to see how amendments flow through the House and whether or not things soften? But as I said in our previous discussion about this 2 weeks ago, I'm certain we will be saying something, because there's no way anything coming out of Indianapolis will be beneficial to our community in terms of SB1. But I almost feel like we could use another round of thought on this to evaluate some nouns and verbs to add to this document. I just don't have them this evening.
Councilor Iverson?
I would also remind this council that our colleagues on the Board of Commissioners has already adopted a similar resolution and sent copies to the governor's office, as well as both chambers of legislature here in Indiana. That also, I would point out that we don't meet again for another 2 weeks. So that I would ask my colleagues to consider both of those points, whether or not our silence this week is deafening, or whether this deserves another round of thought that we then take up in 2 weeks' time.
Councilor Decker?
I'd make a suggestion that, I mean, we could always on the fly add a whereas here. But I do think we could, and I'm not opposed at all to what Councilor Henry is saying. I think that at some point, somebody has to talk about what our superintendent's been talking about with our schools, our bus services. I mean, good God, what are we talking about here? Are we going to have cafeterias that don't have food in them? Because my gosh, when you watch the federal level, President Musk, the Doge folks have not told us where we sit tomorrow, where we report in, or whatever. I mean, this is a county that runs on grants and other things. So we will need perhaps some stronger language. But my suggestion is we just adopt it tonight. We send it off. The governor's indicated that he's displeased with the Senate. That's fine. Again, he and his cabinet will not be responding to those ambulance calls tonight. And then in 2 weeks' time, if we need to, we can adopt a second resolution specifying cuts and keep going. And it may be us, again, legislators or anyone else watching here that come home to this district, it may be us talking about this till the cats come home, so that we don't end up like that 2010 council that for not because of state cuts, but because they were coming out of a housing financial crisis, they made a decision not to, I assume, I wasn't there, to not further invest in ambulance services because they were in tough times. It was awful times. That's our future here, legislators, where rubber does meet the road. So I think we could be doing this forever, and we could be talking about it beyond even when they're in session. And I'll tell you what, when those ambulances don't come further, or it gets worse and other services are cut, I'll be telling them to call those legislators. Thank you.
Councilor Wiltz?
I just want to express that I agree with Councilor Decker, Councilor Henry, and I do think that keeping some specificity, some even adding teeth to it is fine with me. I think we are in danger of watching horrifying things happen and just sitting by the wayside. And so my only thing is, I don't have it pulled up in front of me right now, my bad, but there could be maybe the addition of a whereas or something. I know it's a dated document, but whereas this is the situation at this point in the session, the legislative session, here is our understanding as of, this date with thus far kind of thing, if that makes sense. And that kind of puts it in context. Thank you. And I agree, we could easily then in 2-3 weeks have something else, something more to say on it. But we've said this is where we are in the session, and this is how we feel about what we see.
Anybody else? Councilor Iverson?
Council, I move to adopt Resolution 2025-05 with the changes that have been made on the screen. And should this be adopted, that copies be sent to the governor's office, both chambers, as well as our colleagues at AIC.
Can we read the changes that were, okay, thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll make a second.
We discuss?
Got a motion and a second, and we can make comments? Councilor Vital?
I'm really in favor of doing things. I have a long history of that. But on the other hand, I think it's important if we're going to do these kind of changes in what we have on the original version, that we, where it says things like where if inactive, and then put in the date as of whatever that version is, because that's what we're replying to at this point, right? So is that what we're going to do if we, so I see in the yellow, it talks about as initially proposed.
So I, on the fly, amended that whereas clause, so it says if enacted, specifically Senate Bill 1 as initially proposed would have a significant negative impact on local municipal taxing units exceeding $2 billion, including reducing Monroe County tax revenues by at least $25 million as a result of the significant real property and business personal property tax cuts alone. And whereas, although amended since its initial introduction, Senate Bill 1 in its current version as of February 25th, 2025, still has significant negative impacts on Monroe County's local budget.
So the first whereas, where it's yellow, I see it talks about the 25 million, but as I remember, and that was for the first of the 3 years that it would impact, right? So I don't see anything about the additional 2 years. Are we going to reference that? Because as I remember, it was a 3-year impact. Wasn't it 25, 30, and 35 or somewhere around those numbers?
Sorry, I'm consulting with Auditor Gregory, who has some more current numbers on the possible reduction.
Because I think in the beginning where it talks about the 25 million, that's fine, but I think it's not just, and that doesn't say what time period that 25 million is. Is that for 1 year, or, and then if we could specify somehow to get the succeeding impact a little more specific, I think, because 25 million is a big number, but it doesn't talk about the succeeding numbers. Does that make sense?
And I think what our auditor has pointed out is the updated fiscal impact numbers that have come out to reflect the changes that came out of the Senate's adoption.
Yeah, I believe I have the most current numbers, and it has specific numbers for 26, 27, and then 28, I believe. So I'm providing that to Ms. Turner King right now.
As always, you're on the spot.
I think the whole shebang is what I'm interested in, seeing what we're opposed to instead of just what kind of looks like, well, there's 25 million now, but it doesn't really go into the whole big picture. I like the big picture out there.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Ms. Molly Turner King is typing out right now, is the newest fiscal impact that was issued per year.
And so it talks about as of February 25th, where did those changes as of that date occur? Could we say something about that? Was that in the House where those changes occurred?
No.
I believe so. I'm going to find the document, I believe, that came from AIC.
And I just want to make sure that, you know, we're keeping on to the, you know, we're seeing the forest for the trees here. There's a motion and a second, and I just want to make sure that, you know, we understand that we're taking a stand here on. It's important to get these numbers right, but
I think it shows the impact to get the numbers right is what I'm interested in.
I may. I actually agree very much with Counselor Fidel, because if you think about all the discussions we've had in here, I mean, if we had a dime for every minute we talked about annexation, this makes annexation look like we lost a nickel in a drawer back there that we can get back into. I mean, it truly does. Those numbers are so beyond staggering that they almost stupefy the mind. You wouldn't even know where to begin to begin the cuts. Or let me say that another way, in the services, because we could not provide the exact same things that someone tonight will expect, or tomorrow morning at the health department, whatever. Those won't change. And when you add that in with changes to the health funding that was done 2 years ago, and again, whatever's going on federal, whatever they come up with tonight, it's just one surprise after another.
All right, we got a motion and a second. As we are doing this in real time, again, I'm gonna ask council to really kind of think about any more questions or comments that need to be made for this. Let's try to keep it moving, because again, we got another resolution and then another discussion after this. So I wanna make sure we keep it moving.
So I amended that whereas clause to read, on February 11th, 2025, Senate Bill 1 was amended in the Senate. And the amendments still have significant negative impacts on Monroe County's local budget, including a reduction of $7,654,000 in 2026, $14,676,000 in 2027, and $20,135,000 in 2028.
Thank you.
And the only other thing that I would like to add to this is the fact that we know this isn't going to be a perfect thing, and all 6 of us have many different things that we could possibly say in here. But the key point is that we are trying to sound the alarm and send this. And again, in talking with State Senator Shelley Yoder, is that we have to also urge our public and the people that we represent here in the county to really start telling the stories. And so if we have people that will, let's call legislators and talk to them about this as well. And anything that we can do to prove the point and to make the case, that is definitely something that we need to make sure that we continue to do as well. So I think this resolution, again, is the next step forward. Obviously, it's not going to be everything that we all want here, but this is, we need action along with our words that we are dealing with here.
Well, and I think it also shows we're paying attention if we give the specifics.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay.
So I think the next step, if you're okay with the language that has been amended, would be to adopt an amended resolution and then proceed to a vote on the amendment and then a vote on the adoption of the amended resolution.
Council, I move to adopt the amendments to Resolution 2025-05 as portrayed on the screen.
All right, we got a motion and a second on the amendment. Any questions, comments? Nope. All right, seeing none, can we?
You can voice vote on the amendment.
That's what I was about to say. Can we go ahead and signify by saying aye for approval of this as amended? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Same sign. All right. Amendment carries, or amendment passes. And now we have to vote on the resolution as amended.
Correct.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if you want to ask for public comment before proceeding to that roll call.
We will go ahead and do that. So anybody that wants to make public comment on this, if you are still listening and watching, we ask for you to either raise your hand on Teams or come into the podium here at the Nat U Hill Room. Seeing no raised hands, but a bell. And seeing nobody here in this room that is taking up on that, then we please have a roll call vote.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Counselor Fidel?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Counselor Henry?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate all the council comments that we heard. And again, we'll keep watching and we will keep taking the task. And hopefully we'll see a governor here soon. Won't hold my breath though. All right, now we will move on to item F.
Council, I move to approve Resolution 2025-10 regarding the assignment of judgments to Waste Reduction District.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, Ms. Turner King.
So because this resolution was added to tonight's agenda, I'm just going to read this one. I promise it's short. So it's a resolution regarding the assignment of judgments to Waste Reduction District of Monroe County. Whereas Monroe County Code Chapter 360 regulates solid waste disposal with Monroe County, and whereas legal actions are brought in the name of the county to enforce the provisions of Chapter 360, and often involve the assistance of the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County for inspections, enforcement, and cleanup efforts. And whereas the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County is not a named party in these legal actions and thus cannot recover any judgment the county is awarded despite the cost that the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County incurs in its inspections, enforcement, and cleanup efforts. And whereas pursuant to Indiana Code 345471, judgments and decrees of a court record for the recovery of money may be assigned by the plaintiff to an assignee, resulting in the assignee becoming the party of interest for the judgment and ending the plaintiff's involvement in the case. And whereas in enforcement actions brought in the county's name and involving the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County, the assignment of the judgment to the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County by the county allows for the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County to recover their expenses for the inspections, enforcements, and cleanup efforts. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Monroe County Council, Monroe County, Indiana, that the Monroe County Council does not object to the assignment of judgments to the Waste Reduction District of Monroe County in enforcement cases brought within the county's name. So, basically what happens is when there is a court filing filed due to address issues within Chapter 360. The county brings it in the county's name, so it's Monroe County versus whoever. County legal litigates it, and once we get a judgment, what happens is the county, we need to somehow get that money to Waste Reduction, who's the individuals who are doing the inspections and the cleanup efforts and incurring the cost of such. And so instead of the county staying in it, what we can do is assign the awarded judgment directly to Waste Reduction. And that's what this does.
Any questions or comments? Looking over here to my right. Councilor Henry, and then I'll go to
Thank you. I
Iverson.
know this was a late edition, and I'm just reading Chapter 360 as we're working through this. So can you, I'm sorry, is this an output of a specific case right now that's requiring a resolution?
No, it's kind of an ongoing thing that we've been dealing with waste reduction cases where anytime we get a judgment in a waste reduction case, the waste reduction individuals are the ones doing the inspections and the cleanup efforts. So they're incurring the cost, but we can't get them the money to recoup their expenditures. So it's not specific to one case. It's just an overarching theme in all waste reduction cases.
So the enforcement clause 360-6, that's either the health department or solid waste management district. Do we require a separate resolution of health departments doing this work as opposed to the waste management district?
No, because the waste reduction district is slightly different, because in essence they're a standalone entity. And so if we got an assignment or if we had a judgment for the health department, we would be able to get the health department the money without the assignment.
Okay, thank you for that.
Looking over here to my left.
So I guess I wonder how they would function without this.
So in essence, county legal would still be involved in the cases. We would go to the court hearings, and then we could still get the money, but it's slightly more difficult. This frees up county legal's involvement in the case, which isn't too burdensome. That's not the point of the resolution, but this is the most efficient way to get them the funds.
Councilor Wiltz.
Yeah, so I'm on the Waste Reduction District Board. We haven't discussed this that I remember, unless it was last year before I was appointed. But have you talked with Mr. McGlasson about this?
I have not. Mr. McGlasson has been working with Mr. Roddy in County Legal's office. And in essence, Mr. Roddy had identified two options moving forward. We could do the assignment in the case, which is what this resolution does, or we can do a memorandum of understanding stating that any money recovered will be paid to waste reduction. And so this way eliminates the need to do an agreement, get the agreement approved every time there's an assignment. So I think in working with Mr. Roddy, this was both Mr. Roddy and Mr. McGlasson's preferred method.
Okay. You say, I think. I just would. My main concern is the fact that you said it frees up county legal, which means to me, it adds work maybe to someone else, perhaps in waste reduction district. I don't know.
No, county legal would still bring the actions in the county's name, and we would litigate the case until we had a judgment. And so it's basically the end of the case at that point. And I say I think because I was reading an email that says, this is what I prefer, I think.
Okay. That's fair. Okay. I think this makes sense.
All right. Councilor Deckard.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Turner King. If we were to, I'm kind of getting a sense that counselors may have more questions and or want to do a little bit of homework on this potentially. Maybe I'm misspeaking. But if we were to hold this up, does that present an issue to legal or to Mr. McGlasson?
I don't think so. I'd have to consult with Mr. Roddy, who handles these cases typically. I know that he has some cases that have already progressed to judgment. And so if we don't consider or pass the resolution at this point, I think he will probably be looking at doing a memorandum of understanding. But I mean, that could be short-lived. If he has to do a memorandum of understanding in just a few cases until we could consider a resolution, I don't think it's that problematic. But he might say something different.
I was just going to say, I don't know what's happening between now and our next meeting, but even that amount of time to get people a little bit of peace and mind to it. And maybe it's one of those where there's not much more peace to be had, but I just see some quizzical faces, and including my own on this. One question is, does this help when there's enforcement, to put teeth into the enforcement so that neighbors know, hey, things are moving quicker, the county's really serious about this, better clean up my yard? Does it do anything around that?
I think the county would still be involved from the initiation of the case. So if it does have teeth, we're not removing those teeth. Because the county still brings the action in the county's name. We're just, once a judgment or an award of money is granted via court, we're assigning that court order to waste reduction so that they can recoup the expenses.
Madam Chair, I'm going to move to table this. I want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence on this side so that we are supportive in making sure those teeth are there in every way that we can. I have worked with a lot of residents and or neighbors who are dealing with issues in which the waste reduction district might get involved. And I want to make sure we're strengthening them fully and not doing the opposite.
I will second with a recommendation this be tabled to the March 11th meeting.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of tabling this discussion until March 11th, which is the next regular session of the council meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. Item has been tabled until March 11th, so we can do our due diligence and ask further questions as needed. Okay. Last but not least, I would like to have a brief, and I will put the emphasis on brief, discussion regarding reasonable budgetary restrictions due to the FSG recommendations and a possible decrease in revenue funding. I would like to kick it off and say that I think that we heard a lot on Friday, and I think we heard a lot today, and I know that we have some departments that are here virtually or will watch after this is all said and done. But this is the uncomfortable part, and the part that this is where we're at. And I would also put this to task and trying to work together by putting the plea out to departments right now. Just like we ask you all in budget season, if there's anything that you can do to help cut for budget season, that is something that we ask. But this is the part that I'm asking right now as chair and sitting in this seat. Help us to help you in the long run. This is a big thing that we have to think about, and if there's any types of spending down, as we heard from Mr. Garitas earlier, the less that we're at a critical point right now. We're still early on in the year. We're still in the first quarter of the year, but things that we don't spend now will help us in the long run in the future. And so if there's any types of changes in terms of comp time, overtime, which we should be trying to watch that anyway, we ask that you help us to help you, because nobody in the long run wants to make the hard decision of laying off people. That is not the business that we want to do, and that's ultimately the last straw that I would like to say as council president and as a counselor that I would like to do. But we have to make sure that we are trying to do all that we can before we get to the weird part where we don't want to be at. We already know that there is some instability in federal government and state government, but we owe it to our local government to have some type of stability here by any means. And so we have the task that has been given to us by the auditor's office of trying to figure out how we can spend that down and not have those cost things. So, I mean, I'm looking at my council here to see if, any kind of recommendations, any type of traveling that is not necessary to do your job or required to do your job. That is something that I think that we should also look at as well. But just wanted to open that up and just wanted to start the conversation so that we can continue to move forward. And again, if anybody is watching and you want to let us know your thoughts, please go ahead and send them to council our way. But again, we're all in this team together and we don't want to lose people, but you got to help us to help you at this point. And that's my plea right now. So now that we open that up, I'm looking to my colleagues here to see if anybody has any comments or anything else to add to that. Councilor Iverson.
Tonight, we heard from FSG and Greg Garitas 5 specific things that they recommend. And I think at the risk of boring everyone, it's a 4-hour meeting mark. I won't go over those again, but I think those not only deserve careful consideration, but I think that they deserve more careful thought as to how those will play out. In particular, I will note that the 5th item, survey department heads for suggestions. I think that probably is best done through the council office or the president of the council to look at no additional appropriations for the year with exceptions is going to be something that we're going to have to think about how to structure that as we go forward. And as we get into what the auditor has suggested, I will note that I think it's probably the appropriate time for this council to send a recommendation to PAC to limit its activities for a certain time period, given the uncertainty of Senate Bill 1. And I will note that Governor Braun had a press conference today where he, just muddied the waters even further. So I think those would be my recommendations, is that we empower the council president to survey department heads, that we give clear direction to PAC to limit its activities for a certain time, and that we alert council office to make no additional appropriations for the rest of the year with clear exceptions.
Councilor Henry.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank you, Councilor Iverson. I think one maybe way to phase or talk about this conversation in a way where we have a red line of things we won't be doing in a short term versus could be doing in a medium term is just to honor the fact that the General Assembly session ends 63 days from today on April 29. That's seen it die for the session. So we have 4 meetings left as a body between now and the end of the General Assembly session. So that's 4 meetings of this body where we could message out that we would not expect to see those additional requests for spending in the next 63 days. And that would frame up with the comment I made a few weeks ago that would be the strategic pause moment. That's the hurricane warning. That's the moment. That's the red warning that we have for 63 days to figure things out. Beyond that, to Councilor Iverson's point, if the governor has a change of heart or a different press conference between now and the end of the session, we can re-adjudicate at that point. But I think we're in a 63-day window right now, 4 meetings of this body that occur in that 63-day window where the memo going out to department heads that articulates some of the auditor's suggestions would be appropriate. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Good suggestions. Looking over here to my left. Anybody? Okay. All right. So I think that is a good point that Councilor Henry made in terms of the 4 meetings left up until April 29th. My concern is they've done it before and they can do it again, that they'll go in a special session. They can get called back at any given moment. And so what I would say to that is, yes, we can maybe try to put a pause of work right now with that. But that doesn't mean that after April 29th is all said and done, that people are like, ooh, we can come out of the woodworks now, and now we can start, sending things to council and PAC and whomever so that we can kind of get that ball rolling again. And I would say to that, we still need to take it slow and steady because again, I don't want to repeat it, but you already know what kind of status we're in right now. And so we really just need to be very mindful and very careful with that. So I would like to see how we could maybe work with the auditor's office and maybe with our council staff to figure out how we can survey department heads and think about what it is, what that looks like in terms of what can they do to help with cuts as much as possible. Ooh, I had another thought, lost it. Yeah, that is the biggest thing here. And it looks like Council Wiltz has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. To your point, maybe a 90-day window would be appropriate. It gives us time to figure out what the ramifications of the end of the session was. And I had another thought and I lost it too. Wow, it's that time of night. What was it? Darn it. Oh, if you're giving direction to department heads about cutting, I guess I would are you asking them about cutting things from the current year, their budget right this minute, like handing back what we've already said for 2025? Are you asking them to look at their 2026 or look at 2025 and then be ready to propose cuts for 2026?
I think it's all of the above. And I think, and I'm not saying that to be a doomsday kind of thing, but on Friday we heard that, again, anything that we are not able to spend, that you can try not to spend right now, can get reverted back into what we can spend for next year. So we have a pivotal moment right now where it's the beginning of the year, we haven't spent a lot. So what we don't spend could, be reverted back into what we could take care of in 26. So not saying that people need to go out with the red pens and start, making everything slash there, but really looking at what you have now and then also thinking about 26 and really trying to help as much as possible. Yeah.
I have 2 thoughts for that. The first one is I think it's perfectly appropriate to ask departments to be very judicious and to take care when making decisions about spending. And in addition, say, hey, don't come to us and ask for any extra for 90 days. All of that I understand. I don't know that I think it's necessarily worth the auditor's time or our department heads right now to get into like a very specific, this is the line and this is the amount, and let's really try to, quantify things to that level. So I guess I would just want to say, here's some very strong guidance on what we need all hands on deck for, with anticipation that maybe something more might happen in the future. So that's one thing. And then I know that it was suggested earlier to have a review of what's been spent at kind of the first quarter and then the six months. And I think that Bree, you and I have talked about really looking at like almost a whole year and going across different lines and funds and saying, well, this one historically just doesn't get, it reverts, it doesn't get spent down. And that's the kind of, I think that might be a first blush kind of way to go as well. That's just.
If I may just respond to that, sure. Mrs. President. So on the email I sent on, January 29th, I included the reversion reports for the past several years. So that really shows how we trend. And there is a clear pattern. So I think that would be really beneficial for everybody to take a little bit of time and review, just as a good starting point. And I can resend that email just so it's at the top for everyone, if that helps.
I'll go to Councilor Deckard and then Iverson.
I think it is always strong for us in every facet to look at belt tightening. Just as a healthy practice. Doesn't mean we always have to tighten the belt, but I think it's always good. And I think our departments and elected officials have a real proven record with it. You'll recall in the years past when we've said we want to do a cost of living adjustment, departments, can you help us with this? They have gone above and beyond, and sometimes to great pain. All this that we're asking them to contemplate in this mindset will come to even more pain. There's no doubt. It's why I'm really hesitant to kick the ball hard into that until the legislature is done. Because I know our audience is potentially those out there who might be watching that have influence. One thing I want to point out is Indiana notoriously has a weak veto system. And for anyone that doesn't know what I mean by that, when the governor says, I'm going to veto this bill and I'm not happy with it, Indiana has a very weak veto system. It's a simple vote override. So that means here, if we were taking this council, for example, if we had someone we were sending something to and they vetoed it, it would just take a simple majority of us to say, we're going beyond that veto, right? With that in mind, when we look historically at this, not to get too far down, we have been observing that weak veto override in the legislature quite a bit. Governor Pence was overridden 60% on his vetoes. Governor Holcomb was overridden 57% of the times. But prior to that, Governor Daniels had the hot hand, only 18%, and then the Democratic governors before were in the middle 20s. I point this out, not that anyone needs a civic lesson from me that's up in Indianapolis. I'm sure they know most of this. In fact, I do know that they know all this. I worked up there with them. Friends that are in the legislature, you have the power on this. The governor's just another person in a mansion. Help us serve locally what we do, because this matters. This is remembered. And I don't mean to be dramatic about this, but it is dramatic. And it'll be pretty damn dramatic when it goes all to hell in a handbasket and we can't do these things. It'll make this morning's newspaper article about ambulance service look like a walk in the park. And that is the level that we're at.
Thank you. Councilor Iverson.
Yeah, I wanted to point something out. That thank you, Auditor Gregory, for resending your email of January the 29th. In today's meeting with FSG, part of his 5 points of recommendations specifically references the 9 suggestions you made in that email. And I'm posing a question to this council or even council staff as to how do we publicize those 9 points to know, or for our departments to know that these are suggestions on how to move forward and that these were referenced by FSG. By 6.
I want to say we probably just need to work on a memo from the president and get that and get all of those 9 points or whatever, do that, and then we'll get that out to the departments.
I think I miscounted. I think it's 8.
Another thing that I would say to that is that's where the liaisons come into play. And I do know that some of y'all are really working together and having your meetings, and I definitely appreciate that and keep pushing hard for those. And again, those that are dual liaisons are working together to make this stuff happen. But I think, in addition to that memo, that is also something that we could truly try to reiterate. Again, these are strong suggestions. Nobody is saying right now, like, we're twisting your arm and making it happen. So I don't want our words to be twisted at all. But again, we are trying to not get to the very bad part of government. And right now we are making strong suggestions. And what I said earlier is help us to help you by really listening and taking this in. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, heartaches, pains, you can call us and call me. I'm more than happy to talk to you or email and meet. But again, these are things that we are hearing. It's not like we are trying to be mean, and it's not like we're just trying to do this. We want to be able to sustain. That is the whole big thing, is sustainability right now, because there's just so much uncertainty right now. So somebody got to be the adult in government and try to figure stuff out and be sustainable and actually be stable. And I think it is us as county government that should be able to do so. But again, we got to work together to make that happen. So looking around for any final comments, seeing none, maybe. Nope. Okay, it is getting late. Now we are at the moment we all have been waiting for, maybe some of us since the beginning of the meeting, which is council liaison updates and comments. So I'm gonna look to my right here and see if anybody has any comments. Councilor Iverson.
Let me offer 2. The first is that the Board of Commissioners updated the Environmental Commission for Monroe County. The focus of that update was to have the action more coming from Monroe County staff than it would be from citizen members. And I think that is going to be an interesting way to approach some of the work that is coming out of the Climate Resilience Plan, particularly the implementation steps. There are 93 of them. Most of them have to be done by county staff. So I think that's a positive change. That body has already met, and I'm looking forward to the next meeting. And of course, that should be televised, as well as adhering to open door laws and all the rest. And the second update that I have is that David Henry and I have been meeting with the health department, and there's a lot of work going on in that department. And so we'll keep you updated as all that work happens. Some of it is PAC related, some of it is health board related. There's just a lot of good stuff happening at the health department.
Councilor Henry.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll keep it very brief in the interest of time. Adding to some of the liaison report outs for the week, had an opportunity to attend some of the emergency management or the EMAC meeting this week. I'd raised to the council's attention that one of the spring activities that our emergency management community has planned is a tabletop exercise or discussion-based exercise around civil unrest in the community and how we deal and coordinate around multi-agency response for civil unrest, which might be a little timely based on some activities this evening. I also will be speaking more with the EMA over the next month or two, especially so much of their funding is tied to federal funding that comes to our community to fund that agency. And of course, that comes through FEMA, which is under some scrutiny in Washington. Secondly, Peter and I did, our Councilor Iverson and I did meet with the clerk's office as well this morning with Clerk Brown to discuss some of her forecasting and concerns about early voting locations when we demolished the Napa building to put up the new convention center. So she's still on the hunt for a early voting location in 26. And then lastly, had a chance to meet with our aviation folks. Some folks may have noticed there's some aircraft over the community over the past few days. The National Guards of Indiana and Wisconsin have been practicing touch and goes between Sparta, Wisconsin and Madison, Wisconsin and here. And so there's a little bit of a military air show on the west side of the county this week. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, looking over here to my left. Counselor. I'll go final, and we'll go in a line.
Okay, so I'll start. I had a great conversation. This is my first round of liaison assignments, so I'm just getting my feet wet. I met with Prosecutor Oliphant, got the tour of the office, quite a maze over there. And she claims we should be expecting to hear from them about 2 pretrial infraction positions because fewer misdemeanors have been happening since 2020, and those user fees funded those positions. And then also, the state may not use the prosecutors for adult protective services. They had a 2-year contract, and that ends June 30th, and there's no plan at this point at 7-1 and after. Then the other liaison assignments, I've visited 3 courts so far in the last couple of weeks. I saw Saltzman, Harvey, and Hazeman perform some of their court duties. I was at the BEDC annual meeting and got to hear updates from Simtra, Phoenix, and the Bloomington Rehab Hospital Organization. And I went to the DBI board meeting and got trained at that a little before that meeting start. They're doing public art projects, which will include money, I believe, from the county, and it will include something being installed on the Samira building, the Samira restaurant building, some public art. And then, of course, I did the Long-Term Finance Committee, I did the Monroe County Women's Committee, and that was pretty much it.
Idle has been very busy. That's fantastic. And I remember when I first started just even observing council meetings, they had a time for liaison updates and no one ever spoke. And it really made a big impression on me because I was out there very new, not knowing anything about how this worked. And I was like, what is this liaison? What is that? What does that even mean? What are they doing? And so it's been sort of something that I've felt was underserved because bringing the information back to council is really important. So I appreciate the depth with which your reporting has come today. I wanted to just update on one of the things that I was involved with this week, which was our local JRAC, which is the Justice Reinvestment Advisory Committee. And in our county, it's the same group as our Community Corrections Advisory Board. They're 2 bodies, and they made a decision to make it the same group of folks, which is a little bit different than how they do it in other counties. And this, the JRAC has statutory duties that I think I've mentioned before in an update that basically this is a group of folks from community as well as both city and county government, all through the justice kind of sphere. And their job is to review, evaluate, and make recommendations for a variety of services and programs
including, everything from pretrial and courts and programs and treatment services. I mean, across the whole system, and also including the jail overcrowding that's specifically mentioned as one of the things they're supposed to be reviewing. I bring all of this up to say that another responsibility is an annual report. And this has been just a couple of years in kind of coming together, but the state sent a request for an annual report. And one of the things that they asked for is specific information related to how our county is handling and spending the opioid settlement money. Thank you for that. So I'll be probably, working to kind of provide that information. Commissioner Jones is also on JRAC, so she may have already reached out, but she and I were kind of tasked with making sure that we did that. In the event, they did bring up a little bit of frustration around wanting to be more involved in some of the other things that seem to be paralleling their duties. It's almost like this is an amazing group of people. I mean, the people in the room, it's pretty impressive, the breadth across the community and the expertise that's sitting at that table. And it's almost like they're just overlooked as the resource that they could be. We are just starting a process where the state's providing some technical assistance to help us figure out how to be functional, because I think that's something that the group has good intentions. They share a lot of information, but in terms of really getting out into the system and coordinating with the efforts that are going on around them with respect to, for instance, opioid settlement funds, or the creation of the Justice Center that, I think individuals on that committee or board were consulted, but they weren't consulted as a whole when that's even kind of part of their jurisdiction. And I say that really because it's in Indiana code that they are supposed to be functioning. All of that is, I just want to bring awareness about them to you all and to the public, because it's a resource, and one of their directives and an interest that they are working toward is creating a community dashboard for justice related data, so that that information is cycled through and presented in ways that are accessible to the community. And so there are a lot of possibilities here. We're trying not to overwhelm ourselves and take it step by step, but at the same time, we're behind on what we've been tasked with. So that is an update on JRAC and Justice Reinvestment Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Decker.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'll be very brief here. I spent a week ago tonight, I spent about 3 hours with the new relaunched Monroe County Citizens Academy. They have five participants in it. This is a program that the county supports, but Purdue Extension does a marvelous job with this program. And we did a lot of discussions around property taxes, how the county works. They want to come see us at Nat U Hill. I invited them to come. And we talked about a great number of issues that were important to them and were germane to the community. Purdue Extension does a remarkable job with this program, and it has not been able to be in a running iteration since 2018. So this was a relaunch, and things are going back to where they were. If you're interested in that, By the way, you can simply do a Google search of Monroe County Citizens Academy, search it on the county website, and you'll find more information about that. If you drop a line to Purdue Extension or us even, we'd be happy to tell you a little bit or connect you so that you're on that list maybe in the future iterations. This Saturday, I'll attend the Soil and Water Conservation District breakfast that they have each year, and I'm excited about that. Martha Miller and I, our director, we've been playing a little bit of a schedule tag with some illness, trying to catch up. The last thing I'll just say is I had a tremendous honor to take Councilor Munson's previous role as a member of the board of Friends of Lake Monroe. And that, while that's not an official county function, supporting Lake Monroe obviously is near and dear to all of us, as we've had voter overvote over the last few years. There's going to be a district day coming up in June where folks can attend and ride a bus with us, see elements of the lake that they would not always see, and particularly around those conservation district areas that need our attention right now, Houston South and others. More to come on that, but it's in early stages, and I wanted to report that out. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I know it's been a long night, and we also don't have long nights very often, but when we do, we have fun. And I'd like to think that maybe tonight was a much needed conversation, maybe lengthy at times, but it was much needed conversation. So that to all of my colleagues, I say thank you for a lot of discussion. And I know some of us might go back and watch and really ponder and think about. I also want to give my colleagues a shout out and say thank you very much to taking to task on your liaisonships. Got some feedback from some department heads as well, and think that they're going fantastic and great. So I appreciate that. I know I put the ask out to department heads about a week or so ago of making sure that this council now is really trying to not be in the business, but also be in the know, because again, we help each other and it's a spirit of collaboration, and we're just trying to make things work more efficient, kind of like maybe what Doge was supposed to do. But except better. That being said, again, working with the auditor's office myself, and will continue to do so. And I just want to say thank you to the auditor for continuing to send the emails, bringing things to our attention. We definitely appreciate that as much as possible, and we'll continue to work with you as we got our marching orders. So we'll get in there. We'll sleep tonight and then get back at it tomorrow. The other thing that I really wanted to say in spirit of everything, thank you to the sheriff deputy that kind of kept us safe here and being outside and paying attention to a lot of different things. We definitely appreciate that. Last but not, a couple of things. One last and not least, I was able to go to Second Baptist Church on this past Friday. Was invited there by a community member who wanted to let me know that the sheriff's office was giving a presentation, and I was a little like, what? But when I went, it was actually a really good presentation that Sheriff Martin, Jail Commander Kyle Gibbons, and Chief Deputy Phil Parker gave to let the folks know in the community that they are changing the culture. And so it was very interesting to listen to that, and they got some feedback. And it seems like they're going to be doing this a little bit more into the community. So I appreciate that. And, being able to witness that as well. So I've been very busy as council president. Phone never stops, but it's okay. And gray hair continues to grow. And the last but not least, I just want to say again, thank you to the council office, but in particular, thank you. Welcome back, Michelle, for being here. We missed you, but I just want you to know that the staff in the office has been phenomenal. People have been given grace when grace has been given and much needed. To get things done and to work efficiently as much as possible. So we say welcome back, thank you. But again, just thank you to all the staff that continues to help us go on. With that being said, it is the 25th day of Black History Month, and we only got a couple more days left, so honor that. And without further ado, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.